Chapter 468. This person was obviously a player. He didn't show any panic or curiosity when he entered the government office. His steps were still calm. Gu Fei peeped from behind the door, hoping that the man would turn his head around, but his wish never came true. He could only watch helplessly as the man walked down the short corridor and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Gu Fei was feeling regretful when he suddenly heard number 2 whisper, "It's number 3. Gu Fei turned his head to look. Number 2 also peeped through the door for a long time. "How did you know?" Gu Fei said. "That. My profession is more sensitive to body shapes." Number 2 replied. "Oh." Gu Fei realized. This raincoat looked simple, but it was the work of a professional. Why did number 3 come in? Isn't his mission in the courtyard? Number 2 said. Gu Fei looked at the empty aisle and said, "That's probably his plan from the beginning." "What?" "Gather a group of people and create chaos in the courtyard. He will take advantage of the chaos to sneak into the government office." Gu Fei said. "Huh?" Number 2 was confused. "Masked, this was his idea from the beginning, wasn't it?" Gu Fei said. Yes." Number 2 said. "This is to facilitate his plan. In a chaotic battle, a mask will become our group's main symbol. If we take off our masks and change our equipment, we'll blend in with the other guilds. Guilds rely on their badges to identify each other, not their faces. At that time, when the target is very clear, it's very likely that we'll overlook this detail. It'll be even easier for him to fool us." Gu Fei said. "You mean?" Number 2 felt a chill down his spine. From the beginning, he didn't have good intentions when he gathered so many people. He just hoped that these people would become the victims of the chaos, and he would take the opportunity to complete his mission. He clearly needs to enter the government office for the mission, but he said it was in the courtyard. The purpose is to not attract too much attention. Those who want to enter the government office will become the primary target of the flower in the Fog Guild. He already thought of this. Gu Fei said. This is too evil." Number 2 was horrified. At first, he only thought that his group was selfish, but now it seemed that even this thought was a little naive. Among this group of people, selfishness was far from the scariest. But he doesn't need to be happy too early. Gu Fei sneered. He definitely didn't expect that we would successfully break into the government office. What he didn't expect even more was that we were hiding behind the door and saw him. Of course, he didn't expect that you could recognize him just by his body shape. "What do you want?" asked number 2. "Of course we have to teach him a lesson. The deeper the better." Gu Fei said. "What's your plan?" Number 2's admiration for Gu Fei was growing. "Plan? Not yet." Gu Fei sighed. "In any case, it's worth eliminating this in PvP. Otherwise, I won't be able to move around in this building. There are guards everywhere. How long will it take?" Number 2 asked. Gu Fei sighed even more deeply. "About an hour. Actually, I just got stained when I came down here. It hasn't been that long, right?" "It hasn't been that long," Number 2 said. "But it's been more than an hour. Although I don't know what number 3's mission is. It should be enough for him to complete it, right?" "It's enough for him to complete it." Gu Fei nodded. But he still neglected a small problem. "What is it?" Number 2 asked. "The current situation is completely different from his plan. So many of us didn't die in the hands of the flower in the fog. Instead, we broke into the government office. Think about it, will the flower in the fog be so kind as to send us off? I guess at this time, they have already started to deploy a large number of guards at the front and back door, waiting for us to come out and vent our anger." Gu Fei said. This isn't a small problem, right?" Number 2's expression changed after hearing this. Obviously, this matter didn't only concern number 3. He was in the government office at this time, and he also had this problem. This brother seems to be too eager to complete the mission. He even neglected this problem. Even if he came in alive, will he be able to get out alive? Gu Fei smiled happily. Number 2's expression wasn't happy at all, but he still looked at Gu Fei expectantly. "This situation, you should have expected it, right?" "Of course," Gu Fei said. Number 2 was a lot more spirited. "Then how do we get out? You also have a plan?" "Of course." Gu Fei still said. How do we get out? Number 2 asked. Just leave the way you came in, Gu Fei said. You mean? Gu Fei clenched his fists and said. Kill our way out. Why aren't you talking? I'm a little dizzy. Let me sit down and calm down for a while. Number 2 hugged his knees and sat in a dark corner behind the door. Okay. Gu Fei nodded. Going out will take a lot of energy. You rest well. I'll recover as well, Gu Fei said as he took out an apple and started eating. Number 2 raised his head and looked at Gu Fei helplessly. He wanted to say something, but in the end he held it in. At this moment he only wanted to cry. Big brother, is this something that can be solved by resting? At this moment, Number 2 deeply understood what it felt like to be on a pirate ship. Hiding behind the door, Gu Fei's mind was calm. He was just a little bored. The space here was really limited, and he couldn't fight to kill time. Number 2 suddenly looked a lot more depressed, so Gu Fei didn't try to talk to him again. Time passed just like that, minute by minute. I wonder how the people who came in are doing with the mission. Gu Fei suddenly thought. Looking at the time, half an hour had already passed. Could it be that they hadn't finished? That was possible. After all, it was their first time here. This was a big mansion, so they had to look around. Especially those who were looking for things. Asking the NPC might not be useful. Thinking of this, Gu Fei felt his scalp tingle. He suddenly remembered that he had just accepted such a task, and it was a shameful theft. Wouldn't this be even more troublesome? Just like that, an hour finally passed. At this time, it was Number 2 who took the initiative to break the silence. It's been an hour. Yeah. Sitting on the ground, Gu Fei nodded. How come there's no news from anyone? Number 2 said. Do you have any of their friends? Gu Fei asked. Number 2 shook his head. Then how do you know there's no news? Gu Fei said. Number 2 didn't know, but not knowing seemed to mean no news. At this moment he was just feeling a little guilty. The more people trapped in this government office, the stronger he felt. He really couldn't understand how Gu Fei could be so calm. Could he really kill his way out like how he came in? The problem was that the two situations were completely different. Last time it could be said to be a sneak attack. This time it was a head-on battle. Sigh, at most I'll just die, it doesn't matter. Number 2 could only comfort himself like this. This was the worst consolation in the game. Done. After enduring for who knows how long, Gu Fei finally turned over and stood up from the ground. He was full of energy. I'll go find these kids, you stay here and don't move, Gu Fei said. Number 2 nodded. Gu Fei walked 2 steps and suddenly turned back. If you trust me, add me as a friend. It'll be easier to contact me. Of course, my name is Scissorhands, Number 2 said. Oh, my name is Qianli Drunk. Gu Fei added Scissorhands as a friend, waved at him, and walked out from behind the door. Qianli Drunk? Qianli Drunk. This name sounds familiar. Scissorhands thought hard behind the door, and suddenly his face turned pale. Fuck. I've been squatting with the number 1 PK maniac in the game for so long. Am I still alive? Scissorhands touched his hands and feet to see if they were still there. He peeked out through the gap, but Gu Fei's figure was already gone. Gu Fei, who had 19 PK points, felt like he was walking on the edge of a knife. There was an inexplicable sense of excitement. At this time, he was calculating his targets. Other than the unknown, the most despicable Number 3, there was also Number 4 who came to find people, Number 5 who came to deliver things, Number 6 who came to collect things. Fuck, everyone's mission is so vague. Gu Fei cursed in his heart. After thinking about it, he covered his face again and put on his Number 9 raincoat. The Number 9 was exposed in a conspicuous position. He waved his hand and pushed the door in front of him open. There was a spacious hall with circular stairs on both sides. The main entrance of the government office was directly in front of him. Gu Fei guessed that those guys should have already completed their tasks by now. Either they wanted to leave the government office hastily and were killed by the people outside the door, or they found out that they couldn't get out the moment they stepped out of the door. In that case, they were probably running around in circles in the front hall. When he entered the hall, he looked up, down, left, and right. He opened all the doors that could be opened, but he didn't see a single person. This group of kids. Are they all dead? Gu Fei felt that the possibility of them not completing the mission was very low. Just when he was about to go up the stairs to take a look, there was a sudden rush of footsteps. Gu Fei, who had already taken a few steps up the stairs, quickly jumped down with the help of the staircase railing and hid behind a large pillar. The footsteps on the stairs clanked and suddenly stopped. Gu Fei was about to poke his head out to take a look when he felt a heavy and thick wind, followed by a loud noise. This person had landed not far from Gu Fei. Gu Fei felt the earth tremble. Just based on the way he moved, this person was definitely a warrior. Gu Fei poked his head out to take a look. It was indeed a warrior in full armor. At this time, he was holding a giant sword with both hands. He looked up nervously at the top of the stairs while scanning left and right. It seemed that he was also looking for a place to hide. Not wearing a mask, not wearing a raincoat. Brother, you are not revealing anything. Do you think I am number 2? I can tell who you are just by looking at your body shape. Gu Fei felt that it was a tragedy. This person was dressed like a commoner, so he couldn't tell if this person was one of the 9 of them. He blamed himself for being too honest. Everyone said that they wanted to hide their identity, but he didn't even use identification on them. This person is a warrior. He is not number 6. Gu Fei concluded that number 6 was the guy who led him to the ruins that day. He was quite fast, but he was definitely not a warrior. However, who was chasing after him? Gu Fei couldn't help but poke his head out to look up the stairs. Chapter 469. The second set of footsteps on the stairs was much lighter. It was obvious that it wasn't a heavy class. Was this person a player or an NPC in the building that could chase someone into such a pathetic state? Gu Fei poked his head out. Before the people on the second floor could see what was going on, he saw the soldier looking around for a while before he found a pillar and hid behind it. He continued to hold his sword tightly, his body like a taut bow and his ears pricked up. It was obvious that he planned to hide here and sneak a heavy blow to his opponent when he appeared. In the end, he didn't wait for the enemy, but the enemy's attack. Gu Fei raised his head to look for someone, only to see a flame suddenly appear in the middle of the hall. The heavenly fire wheel. Fuck, how bold. Gu Fei was quick to react. With the heavenly flaming wheel in range, the warrior would not be able to escape. Unfortunately for him, he would also be hit by it. Gu Fei hurriedly darted to the side and hid behind another pillar. Then the fire wheel fell from the sky. The warrior couldn't dodge in time and was grilled. When he turned his head, he saw Gu Fei. Gu Fei's attire was much more obvious than his. He was masked and the number 9 was placed in a very conspicuous position. The guy was surprised when he saw it. Number 9. It was one of us. Before Gu Fei could greet him, the person had already rushed towards Gu Fei excitedly, as if he had seen a life-saving straw when he was drowning. In the end, he didn't even have time to touch the straw. He only took a few steps from behind the pillar when he stepped on the rising, blazing 3,000 layers flames. Gu Fei dodged the spell with a quick retreat. He couldn't do anything to the warrior, who he didn't know what number he was. He could only watch as the warrior disappeared in the sea of fire. Killing a warrior with 2 spells wasn't something a normal mage player could do. Gu Fei was naturally one of them. Who else could it be? Drifting? Strange pupil? Or was it the NPC mage guarding the government office? Before he figured it out, Gu Fei decided not to act rashly. If they were experts like Drifting and Strange Pupil, Gu Fei would not be afraid. What he was afraid of was a strange, high-level NPC like the system. Right now, it was best not to provoke it. Gu Fei, who continued to hide behind the pillar, did not move. The footsteps on the stairs also stopped, and the hall returned to silence. Gone. Or are you looking for me? Gu Fei didn't know if the other party had noticed him. After all, that person had shouted number 9 excitedly. He didn't know if the person on the stairs had heard it or not. Leaning close to the pillar, Gu Fei moved slowly, changing his field of vision little by little, but in the end he still saw nothing. Gu Fei simply took out an apple and threw it up the stairs with all his might. Pa! The apple fell on the stairs, and then bounced down the stairs, rolling down the stairs. The sound was clear and bright in the whole hall. Is he really gone? Gu Fei walked out from behind the pillar and came to the stairs. He caught the apple that rolled down and looked up. There was no one on the stairs. He walked up the stairs, but before he took a few steps, he suddenly heard footsteps coming from the hall below. Gu Fei turned his head and flung the apple in his hand away. Ouch! Although the apple that Gu Fei threw did not deal any damage, it was as accurate as any skill in the game. The person was hit in the head and screamed in shock. Then, he realized that it was an apple that had hit him. When he looked back, he saw a masked man in black jumping down the stairs and dashing towards him. Number 9. The person shouted. Gu Fei stopped in his tracks, but still maintained his distance and did not approach. After all, among the 9 people, number 3 was going to be an enemy. Gu Fei did not dare to let his guard down. It's me. Number 4. The person could tell that Gu Fei was still suspicious of him. He quickly put on his clothes and mask, and changed into his raincoat with number 4 embroidered on it. So it's you. Gu Fei smiled. He could recognize number 4, because number 4 was the most talkative. Even though Gu Fei couldn't recognize number 4, after a few more words, Gu Fei could recognize his voice. Where are the others? Gu Fei asked. After coming in, they all went to do their own missions. I don't know. Number 4 said. Number 4 was in front of him. Number 6 was definitely not a warrior. Then the person who died could only be number 3 or 5. However, number 3 was a conspirator who entered the hall without everyone knowing. He shouldn't have reacted like he saw his savior. That meant that the person who died was number 5. Number 5 is a warrior, right? Gu Fei confirmed with number 4. He guessed that there weren't many people like him who would not identify other people's classes. Yes, that's right. Number 4 was indeed one of the dishonest people. Gu Fei didn't forget to despise him as he received the information he provided. Number 5 is dead. Gu Fei said. Ah, how? Number 4 was shocked. Did someone come in through the fog? I don't know yet. Gu Fei said. It shouldn't be. He had been hiding behind the back door for more than an hour, and other than number 3, no one else had entered from that side. If someone wanted to chase after them, they wouldn't have gone around the front yard and openly entered through the front door, right? Then who is it? Number 4 asked. I don't know yet. Did you finish your mission? Gu Fei asked. Yes, but I don't think I can get out now. Number 4 said. Did you see the person outside? Gu Fei asked. I should say, other than the person outside, I can't see anything else. Number 4 smiled bitterly. Gu Fei admired people who could still maintain a sense of humor in a situation like this. Number 1, number 7, and number 2 were at a loss in the face of danger. Gu Fei was almost used to their behavior, but number 4 seemed to be a little different. Do you have any ideas? Gu Fei asked. Number 4 had some ideas. He was the leader of the group of 9. Gu Fei was a little confused at first, but after understanding the relationship between the people, he understood. Normally, in this kind of group, the initiator would be the leader. However, number 3, the initiator of this group of 9, had an ulterior motive. In order to make it easier for him to fish in troubled waters, he couldn't put himself in the position of a leader who would be noticed at any time. And number 3, who was pushed to number 1, was hesitant about this plan. How could he make any decisions? Number 2, on the other hand, was obviously a fanatic who read comics. Therefore, number 4 couldn't help but catch up and become the leader. I wonder if there's a secret passage in this government office that leads directly out? Number 4 said. Gu Fei immediately retracted his opinion of number 4. It seemed like this person was also a fanatic. Number 4 received Gu Fei's gaze and said embarrassedly, Actually, I've been looking for a while, but I didn't find anything. Looks like it's impossible. Gu Fei sighed. He understood that number 4 wasn't a fanatic. He was just trying anything in a desperate situation. I don't know where number 6 went. Let's look for him first and think of a plan together, Gu Fei said. Will the person who killed number 5 come out to attack us again? Number 4 looked around nervously. It's very possible. Gu Fei was always so honest. He didn't know how to comfort others at all. This is still the fastest way to leave, number 4 said. Gu Fei admired his spirit of entertainment. How about I bring you to a safe place first? I'll look for number 6, then we can leave together. Oh, what safe place? Number 4 was most interested in the word safe at the moment. Gu Fei brought him to the dark corner at the back door. Wait here for a while. Ah, number 2. What a coincidence. Number 4 exclaimed behind the door. He poked half of his head out and said to Gu Fei, Number 2 is here too. I know, Gu Fei said. You guys wait for me together. Okay. Come back early. Number 4 waved at Gu Fei. Damn it, am I looking for lost children one by one? Gu Fei thought bitterly as he set off from the back door again. Gu Fei returned to the hall at the front door and went up the stairs on the left again. The guy who killed number 5 just now had disappeared from this place. Gu Fei decided to go there to see if he could find anything from here. At the same time, he also wanted to pay a visit to his mission target, Giordano. After walking around the second floor and finding nothing, Gu Fei went straight to the third floor and went straight to Giordano's office. The scene disappointed Gu Fei. This guard captain didn't care about personal space at all. He hung out with a bunch of soldiers all day. Program things really didn't have much of a life. Gu Fei didn't have the time to sit on the sofa and wait for an opportunity. He needed to go out and look for number 6. He pulled the door open and was about to leave when he received a message. It was number 2 Scissorhands. I'm hanging up. What happened? Gu Fei was surprised. It's number 4. Number 4? Gu Fei didn't understand. We chatted for a while and he suddenly asked if I wanted to make a bet, Scissorhands said. A bet? He asked me to bet with him to see who could leave the government office first. The bet was 100 gold coins. Scissorhands said. I didn't think much about it. I just casually agreed, so he immediately gave me 100 gold coins and said I won. By the time I realized, this person, is there something wrong with him? Gu Fei was shocked. He finally understood what it meant by there were all kinds of strange things in the world. Sigh. Scissorhands said. Sorry, it's my fault. Gu Fei's mind flashed with the image of him bringing the big bad wolf into Little Red Riding Hood's boudoir. It's okay. You have to be careful. Maybe he'll play some tricks with you. Little Red Riding Hood, oh no, Scissorhands said. I will. I'll definitely help you bring out your mission item. Gu Fei said. There was one less player in the government office. Chapter 470. Who is this number 4? With this question in mind, Gu Fei rushed out of the guard room and prepared to go down to the first floor to find that guy. The government office was silent. The guards stood on both sides. Although they were humanoid, they were still lifeless machines. Gu Fei ignored the machines and quickly rushed down the stairs. He passed through the hall and the short, dark corridor that he had entered from the back door appeared in front of him. Gu Fei was sure that number 4 was still here. Judging from his actions of killing number 2, this was already a PK without any profit or purpose, and he had even paid 100 gold coins for it. In that case, it could only be his hobby, something which he found very interesting. Killing number 2 was interesting, and killing Gu Fei was the same. So he would definitely wait here for Gu Fei to come back and ambush him. Gu Fei had been squatting there for more than an hour, and he was familiar with the view from the crack of the door. Gu Fei used teleportation to flash past the area covered by the crack of the door, and continued to move forward cautiously. But wouldn't it be too easy for him to PK this guy? Gu Fei wondered if there was a better way to punish him. Gu Fei looked around the corridor. He saw the door handle and the wall lamp on both sides of the wall. Gu Fei suddenly had an idea. Walking to the door quietly, Gu Fei took out a long rope and tied it to the door handle. On the other side, Gu Fei looked at the wall lamp. If he pulled it over and tightened it, the gap between the door and the wall would become narrower. What was even more amazing was that the ceiling of the corridor was protruding downwards. If he pulled the door all the way to the end, it would form a perfect structure. So being trapped in this dark and narrow space seemed like a good punishment. This was Gu Fei's plan. Next, he had to fix the other end of the rope to the wall lamp. He couldn't do this without being seen by number 4, so he had to be fast. He grabbed the rope and waited for the cooldown of teleportation to end. This was the fastest way to move. By the time number 4 saw it, reacted, and responded, it would be enough for him to complete what he needed to do. The cooldown was over. Gu Fei took a deep breath and looked at the wall lamp. He stretched out his finger and whispered softly, without missing a beat. The wall lamp was right in front of him. Gu Fei's teleportation sent him to an extremely comfortable height. With a quick flick of his arm, the rope wrapped around the wall lamp. Gu Fei grabbed the rope with both hands and pulled it tight as he fell. This was also to test whether the connection between the wall lamp and the wall was sturdy enough. If it was easily torn off, then it was naturally impossible to trap the person behind the door. The only way was to go up and hack the person to death. The test was perfect. The wall lamp was so sturdy that Gu Fei could hang on the rope. Gu Fei quickly tied a knot and happily landed on the ground. He heard a muffled thud from the door behind him, followed by someone shouting, "What's going on?" Number 4's voice. Gu Fei became even happier and said with a smile, "It's me." "Who? Number 9? Number 4 asked from behind the door. "That's right. You're back? Come and help me take a look. There's a problem with the door," Number 4 said. Gu Fei laughed. It seemed that this fellow was much slower than he had imagined. Didn't he see that someone was messing with the door? Or was this guy tricking him to come closer? Did he have some other tricks up his sleeve? With that thought, Gu Fei didn't move and said, "Let's make a bet. Let's bet whether or not number 2 is behind the door. I think he is." "Then I can only bet that he isn't," Number 4 said. "So you win. Your reward is to continue to stay behind the door," Gu Fei said. There was silence behind the door. "You definitely didn't think that number 2 and I had already added each other as friends, right?" Gu Fei said. He had specifically confirmed this with number 2, but number 2 clearly said that he didn't reveal this information. This was also the main reason why Gu Fei was sure that number 4 would still be waiting for him here. Number 4 thought that Gu Fei didn't know about number 2's death, and would come back here without any suspicion. "Stay here for now. When I have time and I haven't forgotten, I might come back to release you. If you really can't wait, you can try to forcefully log off," Gu Fei said as he prepared to leave. He didn't feel like there was much to say to number 4. Hey, Number 4 shouted from behind the door. Gu Fei ignored her and left without looking back. The corridor behind the door became quiet again. The lights on both sides of the wall continued to flicker. The rope that Gu Fei pulled out was projected onto the walls on both sides. The door was suddenly pushed open. It wasn't the side that Gu Fei pulled tight, but the other side of the door. Number 4 stood quietly by the door and looked at the rope that was stuck to the wall and its blurry shadow on the wall opposite her. Shadow. What Gu Fei ignored was the shadow. From the moment he arrived at the corridor behind the door, even though he didn't appear in his field of vision, Number 4 had already noticed the presence of someone from the shadow on the wall. He still didn't know who this person was. He thought that if this person continued to walk down the corridor, he would eventually be exposed to his field of vision. However, the shadow on the wall suddenly flickered, and this person's shadow suddenly moved forward a few meters. Gu Fei used teleportation to jump out of his field of vision. However, Number 4 quickly grasped 2 pieces of information from the flickering shadow. The person had this special high-speed movement method. The person knew that he was behind the door and had malicious intentions, so he intentionally moved away from his field of vision and didn't let him see him. The only people who would know that he was at the back door were Number 2 and Number 9. Number 2 had already been sent to the resurrection point. Number 9 shouldn't have any malicious intentions towards him, but he suddenly did. There was only one possibility. He knew that he killed Number 2. How did he know? Obviously, Number 2 told him after the two of them added each other as friends. With just a shadow that jumped a few meters away, Number 4 immediately deduced the above conclusions, and none of them were wrong. Therefore, when Gu Fei was planning how to fix the door, Number 4, who was only one door away from him, was already on guard. Even though he knew that the person was not friendly, he still didn't know what Gu Fei was going to do. He was curious, so he quietly watched from behind the door. He was completely prepared to escape at any time. Therefore, when Gu Fei teleported to pull the rope, Number 4 immediately darted out from behind the door. Gu Fei had to wind the rope tighten it, and tie the knot. There were quite a lot of procedures that required some time. The reason why he felt that he could make it in time was because he was certain that number 4 would be caught off guard by this sudden situation. It would only take a few seconds for Gu Fei to judge the situation. He didn't expect number 4 to be prepared. He flashed, and number 4 rushed out immediately. In a few seconds, he flashed to the other door. Number 4's movements weren't slow at all. For Gu Fei, who was several meters away, the conversation that followed was coming from the opposite direction. There was only the width of the corridor between the left and the right. If Gu Fei stood closer, he would have noticed it. Unfortunately, he didn't move forward, and number 4 purposely didn't make him suspicious. Therefore, after Gu Fei left, number 4 walked out from behind the door. Looking at Gu Fei's design, he was amazed. That was close. I almost got trapped here. This kid is too much. Number 4 pulled the rope. Both ends were very sturdy. If he really got trapped behind the door, there was nothing he could do. This guy, I need to kill him. Number 4's face was filled with excitement. This guy has a good relationship with number 2, so he will definitely think of a way to help number 2 complete the mission. As for number 2's mission, I'm quite clear about it. So, I already know where you are going. Number 4 thought about it and left the corridor. Gu Fei walked up the spiral staircase. He wasn't done with number 4. For him, he still had to eliminate number 3, find number 6, and find the things that number 2 needed. What is the purpose of this mission? Am I an NPC that serves the players? Gu Fei thought with tears streaming down his face. The first thing he had to deal with was number 2's mission. Originally, he thought that the mission was about stealing, so he wouldn't get any clues from the guards in the hall. In the end, Gu Fei just wanted to give it a try and ask casually. He didn't expect that he would actually get the information he needed. There might be clues on the top floor. This was really out of Gu Fei's expectations. As he reported the good news to number 2, he heard number 2's analysis. If it was me, don't even talk about asking. The guards would probably kill me when they see me. Probably because it's you. That's why it's just a normal item. Your question is also a normal inquiry, so the NPC gave you the answer, right? When Gu Fei heard that, he couldn't help but feel that the parallel world was really a new way of thinking in online games. Clues that the person on the mission couldn't get could be found by others by asking. This thinking was really too reverse. Even veteran players like Sword Demon Brother you definitely wouldn't have thought of it. After a while, Gu Fei arrived at the top floor. The space on the top floor was narrow and low, and it seemed to have been abandoned for many years. There were cobwebs everywhere. Gu Fei coughed and felt his face was covered in dust. What made him even more pessimistic was that there was not a single NPC on this floor. Didn't this mean that he could only bury his head to look for it and not ask for information? As for the item that number 2 needed, what kind of secret drawing material was it? Was it a piece of paper, a book, or something else? Number 2's mission prompt didn't specify it either. Gu Fei could only look for it with a bitter face. In a short while his body was covered in dust. Half a candle, rusty nails, starving rats, charred wooden sticks. The named items and props in the garbage pile on the top floor were really endless. Gu Fei suspected that this was a special design by the system to hide the mission items, and then let the players find it. After rescuing a trapped butterfly from a broken cobweb, Gu Fei shone a weak beam of sunlight through a hole in the roof, and found a broken piece of paper in a broken wooden table, and a drawer that stretched out in half. Chapter 471. Gu Fei stepped forward and picked up the broken piece of paper. He glanced at it, and found that it was indeed a blueprint for making clothing. This was something that was often needed for life skills to learn how to make equipment through the blueprint. There was a fundamental difference between this and the raincoat that number 2 made on his own. The things that he made on his own would only have the appearance, but the things that he made through the blueprint would have the essence of the game, which was the attributes of the equipment. After sending the information of this item to number 2 for confirmation, it was indeed the item that he needed for his quest. Knowing that Gu Fei had obtained it, number 2 cheered and forgot the pain of dying a level, which made Gu Fei feel very gratified. After putting the blueprint into his pocket, Gu Fei was already ready to leave the junkyard. When he turned around and walked past the broken window, He inadvertently glanced out and couldn't help but laugh. Through the broken window, Gu Fei happened to see number 7, who was still in the backyard. This guy had completed his quest, and now he only wanted to stay alive. Unfortunately, the backyard was also in a state of panic, and the players who were looking at things through the fog were mobilizing their troops everywhere. Number 7 hid in the grass and didn't dare to move. Gu Fei looked down at his sorry state and thought it was funny, but at the same time, he saw the players who were looking at things through the fog a few meters away from him, and he couldn't help but break into a cold sweat for him. At this moment, a string of burning fireballs suddenly streaked across the sky. With Gu Fei's eyesight, he knew that the fireballs were heading towards number 7. In a great shock, he quickly extended his sword out of the window and chanted a rapid fireball. Gu Fei's original intention was to use his rapid fireball to collide with the opponent and neutralize the opponent's attack. This skill was extremely difficult, and Gu Fei wasn't completely confident. In addition, there was a time delay when he released the rapid fireball, and Gu Fei didn't usually use this skill, so he didn't know how long the delay was. In the end, there was a deviation. Gu Fei's rapid fireball brushed past the tail of the string of fireballs, and the string of fireballs continued to rush towards number 7, who was lying on the ground and didn't know it at all. Gu Fei could no longer warn him, and could only watch helplessly. Who would have thought that just as the string of fireballs was about to hit number 7, it suddenly burst into a ball of fireworks in the air. Gu Fei was overjoyed. He knew that this was the limit of his magic skill. Spells were different from the arrows of archers. After the arrows reached the range, they would fall to the ground like a physical phenomenon, but once the magic reached the limit of the range, it would disappear. Because the rapid fireball would have an explosion-like effect after hitting the target, when it reached the limit, it would not be able to continue flying, so it would naturally explode. Gu Fei didn't feel happy for number 7 for long. Although the string of fireballs didn't hit number 7, it completely attracted the attention of the confused players in the backyard. They all rushed in that direction to check, and poor number 7 was pulled out by them. This guy raised his hands in surrender as if he wanted to explain something, but the players didn't give him the chance. Each of them used a skill, and used him as a tool to vent their anger. Was this mage the one who killed number 5? Gu Fei thought as he rushed out of the trashy attic. Judging from the trajectory of the rapid fireball, Gu Fei guessed that it was probably 2 floors lower than the top floor. The guy must have been outside a room near the window and found number 7 in the backyard, so he immediately killed him. This kind of behavior didn't seem like the style of an NPC. Could it be number 3? Gu Fei thought as he quickly rushed to the room on the floor he determined. At this time he was a little confused. If this was really number 3, then he had already successfully entered the government office. All he had to do was to complete his mission. Why did he attack these players who were originally abandoned by him? Didn't he just let them live and die on their own? It seemed like all these doubts could only be solved by finding this guy. Gu Fei rushed to the floor, and saw a figure walking out of one of the rooms. "Stop!" Gu Fei yelled as he rushed over. The figure didn't stop and turned to run. However, since he was a player and a mage, there was no way he could be faster than Gu Fei. A mage that added agility was really unique in the game. If it was in the wilderness, Gu Fei would be able to catch up to him in no time. However, this was in a building, so absolute speed didn't give him much of an advantage. The guy clearly understood that he couldn't compete with Gu Fei in speed, so he quickly ran into another room. Isn't this suicidal? Just as Gu Fei thought that, he saw a figure flying towards him from the corner of his eye. It was directly flying up from the bottom of the circular staircase to attack him. Gu Fei quickly dodged to the side. When he turned around to look at the person, he was shocked. Number 4. You have a fast reaction. Number 4 held a dagger in his hand. He had a smile on his face, but it was as disgusting as a poisonous snake sticking out its tongue. How did you come out? Gu Fei was curious. He felt that the design was flawless. Number 4 laughed, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. If I didn't come out, how could I kill you? Gu Fei wasn't in the mood to waste time with number 4. Although this person was despicable, his goal was simple. He just wanted to kill someone. As for the person that was suspected to be number 3, Gu Fei didn't know what his goal was. It was worth studying him. Let's finish this quickly. Gu Fei pointed his sword at number 4. You've got guts. Number 4 laughed. He placed his dagger in front of his chest and continued to stare at Gu Fei like he was staring at his prey. Dual flame flash. Gu Fei didn't want to waste any time. He rushed forward and swung his sword at number 4. Under the cover of the sword, Gu Fei used his full strength. For an ordinary person to be able to use this kind of move that could be used to deal with Gu Fei, it was considered a great advantage. However, Gu Fei still neglected a problem. After all, his kung fu was honed from the real world. When he executed a move, all the reactions he had prepared were completely based on the foundation of reality. At this time, he was in a game, and the skills in the game were existences beyond reality. The reactions of the skills might not necessarily be covered by Gu Fei's follow-up moves. Number 4 faced Gu Fei's attack. His body suddenly shook. All that was left in Gu Fei's eyes was an afterimage. The afterimage turned into countless afterimages, drawing an arc in the air and going behind Gu Fei. His speed was not inferior to teleportation. How could someone move at such a high speed in the real world? Therefore, this time, Gu Fei's follow-up move was completely ineffective. The dagger was already aimed at Gu Fei's back. With such a high-speed attack, even if Gu Fei could react, he wouldn't be able to react in time. After all, there was a limit to human strength. However, number 4's attack missed. This was because Gu Fei also had a skill that surpassed human strength: teleportation. So it really is teleportation? Number 4's attack missed. He looked at Gu Fei, who had turned around 5 meters away. Shadow movement? There are so many strange skills in this game, Gu Fei said. How did you know? Number 4 was shocked. It's your dagger skills. How could I not know? Gu Fei laughed. Appraisal skill? That's impossible. Number 4 was surprised. Everyone knew that it was possible to identify a player's equipment with appraisal. However, at the same time, people now also knew that appraisal skills level was related to the player's and equipment's level. The dagger that number 4 was holding was a piece of equipment that surpassed his current level. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be identified by appraisal skill. Surprised? It seems like you've done a lot of PK, but haven't done many wanted missions? Apple vinegar. Gu Fei read out the opponent's name. You can even identify its name? Number 4 was indeed apple vinegar. He was surprised that Gu Fei could recognize its name. Do more wanted missions and you'll understand, Gu Fei said. Apple vinegar was the target of his daily mission. However, it was still a wanted mission. The third function of the wanted badge was also effective on him. 100% appraisal. Therefore, even though Gu Fei's appraisal skill level wasn't that high, and apple vinegar's dagger was a piece of equipment that surpassed his level, Gu Fei was able to identify it immediately. Apple vinegar's equipment was in front of Gu Fei's eyes. However, he didn't have the ability to determine the power of the equipment. He only read out the skill on apple vinegar's dagger. Shadow movement, an assassin's ultimate skill that left an afterimage and instantly appeared behind the enemy to deal a fatal blow. What a troublesome skill. Gu Fei sighed. With the help of the system, this kind of skill was more difficult to deal with. 1 minute cooldown, Gu Fei said. Looks like we don't have time for nonsense. We have to hurry. I think so too. Apple vinegar smiled. He didn't seem worried about such a powerful skill being on cooldown. Watch out. Gu Fei swung his sword. Apple vinegar's face revealed an evil smile. His afterimage once again drew an arc and flashed to Gu Fei's side. Ha ha ha. Can you identify the skill on my skill tree? Apple vinegar's loud laughter came from behind Gu Fei. The viper-like dagger stabbed out again. He stabbed Gu Fei, but it was as if he stabbed air. Apple vinegar was startled. At this time, Gu Fei had already turned around. He alternated his hands. The raincoat that slid down from his shoulders was actually tied into a knot, tightly wrapping around his right hand and his dagger. It's not a good thing to talk too much because it's very noisy. Gu Fei used his left hand to pick his ear. His right hand had already flashed the night-flowing light sword again. Apple vinegar was still looking at his right hand that had been beaten up. His face was full of disbelief. Why? Apple vinegar seemed to be talking to himself. You don't know? Gu Fei said. I bet you that you've never missed before, right? Because you've never missed before, so you're completely inadequate in your response after you miss. Your reaction is so slow that it makes me want to crouch down and tie my shoelaces first. The first time I missed, my reaction was slow. The second time it's still so slow. Gu Fei shook his head and sighed. I don't know what the punishment for this sword will be. Go and see for yourself. Gu Fei swung his sword down. His eyes flashed and apple vinegar disappeared with a flash of white light. Turns out I also have a lot of words. Lecturing others for no reason. It's an occupational disease. Gu Fei sighed. Chapter 472. Apple vinegar was successfully killed by Gu Fei. And to Gu Fei, he was still the target of his daily quest. Gu Fei did not know what punishment he would receive after killing him. Would he go to jail? Who knew how long that would take? Giordano had given Gu Fei a lot of information, listing all of apple vinegar's PK crimes, but there was no mention of his current PK value. If they wanted to put this kid in jail, it would be hard to imagine how they would calculate it. Gu Fei was not in the mood to worry about him. Number 3, who had snuck into the room, was still waiting for him to catch him. Gu Fei rushed to the room that the man had snuck into and pushed the door open. He saw the masked man standing calmly by the window. Gu Fei hurriedly steadied himself and did not rush forward. The person was so calm. Was there a trap here? Gu Fei held the door with one hand to keep it open, his eyes searching the room. Guards. There were many guards in this room, but this was nothing surprising. Guards were the most frequently seen NPCs in this government office. Other than that, Gu Fei could not see any traps, nor did he feel any hidden killing intent. This made him nervous. A trap that could not be detected was always the scariest. Gu Fei stared at the masked person in front of him, observing his every move to prevent him from playing any tricks. Unfortunately, Gu Fei did not have the ability of number 2. The person was right in front of him, but he could not tell who it was just by looking at the figure. Then again, even if the person took off the mask, he would still not know that he did not know number 3. What made Gu Fei feel even more uneasy was the aura of the person in front of him. That confident look on his face did not seem like he was faking it. He must have some sort of plan. Gu Fei became more alert as he thought about it. However, he did not make the first move. He was afraid that if he made the first move, it would be the result that the other party wanted. In this game, it was not about equipment or skills but intelligence. The air around them was unusually tense. At least, that was what Gu Fei felt. After a long stalemate, Gu Fei glanced at the time. Fuck, only a minute had passed. However, he had already made up his mind to strike after the enemy had struck. He continued to stand still. In terms of patience, Gu Fei was confident that he would not lose to anyone. However, in just 1 minute, the opponent's situation seemed to have changed. He seemed to have lost his composure. This made Gu Fei a little disappointed. An opponent who seemed to be very shrewd showed signs of defeat in less than a minute. This made Gu Fei feel that he was not playing a game, but playing with loneliness. The other party's gaze turned from impatient to doubtful as he looked at the group of guards around him. What's so special about these guards? Gu Fei followed his gaze as he slowly walked into the room and closed the door behind him. The guard did not react to Gu Fei's actions. Just like any other guard, he stood there obediently and played his role. Gu Fei could not understand what was so suspicious about these guards that the guard would stare at him like this. The first to completely lose his patience and break the silence was the other party. He said, "Why is it like this?" Another question that he did not understand. Gu Fei subconsciously wanted to say that he should ask if there was anything he did not understand. This was an illness. A teacher's job was to teach and dispel doubts. Why? Shouldn't your PK value be 20? The other continued. Gu Fei was completely relieved when he heard this. No wonder the other party would make such a suicidal move. No wonder he would have the confidence to win after seeking his own death. As expected, the other party was not playing a game, but a game of wits. He had noticed from the beginning that Gu Fei had increased his PK value to 20 in order to help number 2 enter the government office. He must have calculated the time, and expected that Gu Fei would only act openly in front of the guards after washing away some of his PK value. He hid in this room first because he saw apple vinegar preparing to ambush Gu Fei at the bottom of the stairs. He concluded that Gu Fei would increase his PK value after killing his opponent. Then he would immediately be killed by the guards inside the room. A deliberate but undetectable trap. This made Gu Fei secretly think that it was a close call because he had indeed neglected to calculate the PK value. Fortunately, he was lucky. He had a wanted mission with apple vinegar. This was the only way to kill someone without counting his PK value. If not for this, Gu Fei looked at the group of guards in front of him, his heart pounding. Apart from that, Gu Fei also noticed a detail. He looked at the person in front of him and asked, "Who are you?" The other party did not answer. This person knew him. Gu Fei had such a bold guess in his heart. After seeing that apple vinegar was about to attack him, he did not even look at the outcome of the duel. He resolutely ran into the room and waited for Gu Fei, whose PK value had increased to 20, to come in and be taken down by the guards. The other party might not have noticed this detail. When he saw that Gu Fei was about to fight, he immediately thought that Gu Fei wanted to increase his PK value. This kind of judgment was definitely made by someone who knew Gu Fei. The silence gave Gu Fei the choice to attack. Since they knew each other, all he had to do was remove the mask on his face. With this thought, Gu Fei shot forward. The room was not big, and the door was guarded by Gu Fei behind him. There was no way he could escape. That was what Gu Fei was thinking. Who would have thought that the other party would do something he didn't expect? The man turned around and pushed open the window behind him, then jumped out. Fuck. So determined. Gu Fei cursed. He did not expect that the person would rather die than let him know who he was. Did he really need to hide his identity? At this time, the height of the floor was even higher than the courtyard's walls. Falling down would mean certain death. Even if he did not die, the players below would not give him any chance of survival. Gu Fei rushed to the window, but found that he was wrong again. The person flew out of the window but did not fall straight to the ground. After falling one floor, the person's feet kicked off somewhere and suddenly leaped up. With one kick, the person broke open a window on the lower floor and flew in just like that. Gu Fei was stunned. He could not see the person's figure, but how could he not see the Grandmaster of Combat's skill? Swallow Slash. This was clearly the Grandmaster of Combat's Swallow Slash. This could not help but surprise Gu Fei, because he clearly saw the chain of fireballs being fired before chasing here, but the person in front of him was a Grandmaster of Combat. Then where did the magician go? Did he chase the wrong person? Time did not allow Gu Fei to think. He quickly rushed out of the room and rushed to the next floor, hoping to catch up to the person's figure again. But as soon as he stepped out of the door, he was met with an ice whirlwind. This time, Gu Fei could not avoid it at all, and he took it head-on. The damage from being hit by the ice whirlwind was secondary. The fatal thing was the huge reduction in speed. A gust of wind followed the ice whirlwind, and with his reduced speed, Gu Fei could not avoid it even if he wanted to, so he took the arrow head-on. Gu Fei, who had lost his agility, did not dare to face the enemy, and quickly retreated into the room, slamming the door shut with a wave of his hand. Then he heard a loud bang and a heavy blow on the door, obviously the sound of the opponent's spell exploding on the door, and the sound of the archer's arrow hitting the door. So sneaky, Gu Fei thought. This ice whirlwind could be controlled by the continuous consumption of mana, so the magician outside the door controlled the ice whirlwind to stop at the side of the door, waiting for Gu Fei to step out. This was not something that could be avoided by human strength. And the archer's arrow came at the moment when Gu Fei's speed was reduced, leaving him unable to dodge at all. Their cooperation was perfect, and they were definitely in contact with the Grandmaster of Combat, who had led him into the room. A high-damage mage, an archer, and a Grandmaster of Combat who had a tacit understanding of each other. Putting all these together, wasn't it obvious who the other party was? Drifting, left hand wrote love, right hand wrote handsome. After guessing the other party's identity, Gu Fei's thoughts became clearer. The third person who organized this team was the Grandmaster of Combat, left hand wrote love, and the one who led him into this team was the archer, right hand wrote handsome. Gu Fei was a little confused. How did number 6 find out that he had a two-way mission with flowers in the fog? Just from the disturbance in the courtyard? So it seemed that Drifting had arranged for him to wait outside the door, and then deliberately led him into this team. What was his purpose? How did Drifting get into the government office? There were a lot of questions, and Gu Fei couldn't wait to know the answer. He sent a message to Drifting. "What the hell are you doing?" Before he could reply, he heard a bang, and the window of the room was kicked open. The guy who had just jumped out of the building had used Swallow Slash again. Hello. Left hand or right hand? Gu Fei only knew these two people, but he couldn't match their names and classes. "It's left hand," wrote Love. The guy said as he took off his mask. "What the hell are you guys doing?" They organized a team, brought them into the government office, and now they seem to be killing them one by one. Gu Fei didn't understand this. "Let's talk about it later." Love Left Hand suddenly flew up and punched. Obviously, he knew that Gu Fei was still slowed down by the ice whirlwind, and he had to take this opportunity to knock down Gu Fei. Love Left Hand punched with extreme confidence. As a result, just when he thought he could knock down Gu Fei with one punch, Gu Fei had already stepped to his side, and with a flip of his hand, he slashed at Love Left Hand's back. Left Hand Right Love was shocked. Had he already recovered? Impossible, there was no reason for him to be so fast. Love Left Hand thought about Gu Fei's action just now. It was not fast, but it was accurate. Underestimated me again. Gu Fei shook his head and sighed. "Do you think you can beat me in a one-on-one fight by slowing me down? Do you think you're an expert?" Butterfly not. Everyone already knows who number 3 is, so what's their purpose? You'll only know next month. Chapter 473. People of the same trade were enemies. In the game, people of the same profession were enemies. Although there were differences in levels, everyone believed that they were the most skilled in their profession. Writing Love Lefty was being looked down upon by Gu Fei. Although he was being compared to the number 1 Grandmaster of Combat, 100 years of experience, he was still unconvinced. In fact, Gu Fei wasn't concerned about their skill level. What Gu Fei meant was that Love Lefty was just a normal person, not a martial artist like 100 years of experience. So even if Love Lefty used Ice Whirlwind to slow down Gu Fei, it was still more than enough for Gu Fei to take care of him. Of course, this wasn't any better. In short, he was looking down on Love Lefty's ability. Writing Love Lefty was unsatisfied, so he turned around and raised his leg. A normal player who used game skills was like an opponent who only knew a few fixed moves to Gu Fei. How hard could it be to deal with him? Even if Love Lefty had some experience in using his skills, this small change couldn't escape the eyes of a professional like Gu Fei. At this time, Writing Love Lefty's leg came flying. Gu Fei saw it clearly, so he tilted his head slightly and the kick missed. Then he lowered his body and grabbed Writing Love Lefty's flying right leg with one hand. He extended his other leg and unkindly swept towards Writing Love Lefty's other left leg. His left hand's flying kick immediately reached a new height. He flipped backwards and fell flat on his back with a smack. If Gu Fei really wanted to attack, he would have slashed Writing Love Lefty's back with a double flame flash. He didn't go all out because he knew Writing Love Lefty. He put down Writing Love Lefty and didn't continue. He stood up and said, "Alright, stop fighting. Tell me what you guys are doing." With a bang, the door was pushed open. The system house's door was open for people to enter and exit. If there wasn't a special arrangement, it wouldn't be locked. Gu Fei blocked a wave of spells and arrows. Now that Drifting and Writing Love Lefty also pushed, the door opened. The two rushed in and saw Writing Love Lefty lying on the ground. Gu Fei turned around and innocently shrugged. "What are you guys trying to do?" Although he was sandwiched between the three of them, Gu Fei was not afraid at all, because the freeze effect had already passed. It was originally only for a few seconds, and if it continued, it would be too much of a freak. Of course, Drifting knew how long his spell would last. He was sure that Right Love Lefty wouldn't have disappeared by the time he cast the spell. But now he saw Right Love Lefty fall to the ground in such a sorry state. Could it be that Lefty had defeated Right Love Lefty when he was slowed down by the frozen spell? Drifting gasped. He realized that the stranger wasn't the only one who had underestimated Gu Fei. He thought he knew how strong Gu Fei was, but he was wrong. Was there a limit to his strength? Gu Fei retreated to the wall and stood in a position where he could easily attack any one of the three. Then he smiled and said, "Talk." "Why isn't anyone talking?" Drifting looked at him and said helplessly, "A mission is also a mission." "What mission?" Gu Fei asked. "It's just a normal mission. I can't compare to you. You actually dared to assassinate Giordano," Drifting said. "But isn't it despicable to purposely use so many people as cannon fodder?" Gu Fei said. He always had a good impression of Drifting. Now that he thought of Drifting doing such a thing, he couldn't help but feel sorry for him. Drifting shrugged indifferently and said, "I think you misunderstood me. I've never been a good person." "Yes, it's a misunderstanding." Gu Fei nodded. He felt a little sorry for Drifting. He always had a good impression of Drifting. So when he found out that Drifting was the mastermind, he had hoped that Drifting could give him a reasonable explanation. Unfortunately, Drifting directly admitted that it was a conspiracy as Gu Fei had imagined. So Gu Fei couldn't show mercy to him anymore. Drifting wasn't a good person, and Gu Fei wasn't a soft-hearted person who would show mercy to others. "Are you going to fight?" Drifting looked at Gu Fei and smiled. "I don't know what's going on, but when you killed the thief, your PK points didn't increase, right? Or maybe it didn't increase to 20. Anyway, if you attack any of us now, your PK points will definitely increase to 20. I think that's why you didn't kill Lefty even though you knocked him down, right?" Gu Fei also smiled. "It seems that you misunderstood me. I didn't kill Lefty because I still think we're friends, so I want to hear your explanation. As for my PK points, you don't have to worry about it. I'm very experienced in dealing with it." "Oh, I see. So are we still friends now?" Drifting asked. "We can be friends, but if you do something wrong, you have to be punished." "This has nothing to do with whether we're friends or not," Gu Fei said. "It's just a game. Do you need to care so much?" Drifting asked. Hee, it's just a game, so I didn't take it too seriously. That's why I said we're still friends. Since it's just a game, you won't mind if I cut you down one level, right?" Gu Fei said. "If you cut me down, how are you going to leave this place?" Drifting walked to the window and pointed down. "Don't tell me you don't know what's going on down there? The situation down there doesn't seem to change if I cut you down or not," Gu Fei said. "Not necessarily." Drifting smiled slyly. Gu Fei suddenly remembered something. He patted his head and said, "I see. You understand?" Gu Fei nodded. "You purposely gathered a group of people. You didn't want them to be cannon fodder. You wanted to send them into the government office." At this time, as one of the people who are currently looking at the flowers in the fog, you can openly enter the government office under the banner of going in and destroying them. What's even more perfect is that after you eliminate these guys, you can walk out in a dignified manner. These foggy people outside are not a threat to you at all. That's right. Drifting nodded. Those people can complete their task, but they have to pay the price of a level. As their companion, I help them complete their task. As one of the people in the fog, I also helped them eliminate the troublemakers. As for me, I also took the opportunity to complete my task. Everyone got what they needed. Well, you just want to do a task. Is it necessary to make it so complicated? Gu Fei said. If you're in the fog, you'll know whether it's necessary or not. Apart from a few core members, the guild did not have much trust in anyone else. So, even if I join them, I won't be allowed to enter the government office when they have an important task. So, I can only create this situation, Drifting said. But I'm surprised that you can come. Drifting suddenly smiled. Without you, it wouldn't be so easy to break into the government office. If we can't break into the government office, you can't either, Gu Fei said. Of course. But you have the permission to enter the government office. Won't that arouse the suspicion of your president? Gu Fei said. Drifting smiled. Because I have the permission to enter the government office of each main city. Drifting pointed at the badge on his chest. I completed a task that spanned more than 20 main cities, so I got this special reward. I have the permission to enter the government office of any main city. Oh, if that's the case, then the left and right hands also have badges. Gu Fei looked at the chests of the two people. and saw that they had the same badge. Drifting nodded. So, it's not difficult for us to get the chance to enter the government office. You? Didn't left and right hand come in with us? Gu Fei said. That is true, but I will naturally include the two of them in my speech. So after we kill everyone in the government office, they just need to return to their original appearances and follow me out, Drifting said. Did they enter the government office? Could it be that no one saw them? Gu Fei said. The chaos down there is beyond your imagination. Think about it. A mission that lasted for so long suddenly suffered such a heavy blow, and so many people went crazy, Drifting said. I see. You've calculated everything, Gu Fei sighed. Except for you. Drifting looked at Gu Fei and said, inviting you to join us was a risky move. With you, the success rate of entering the government office will be higher, but how to get rid of you in the government office will be tricky. We'll know soon enough. Gu Fei clenched his sword. If it was someone else, I'd try to negotiate with them, Drifting said. What conditions? Gu Fei asked. Now, besides the four of us, there's only one person left in the building. Don't worry. That person is gone. Gu Fei knew that Drifting was talking about number 2, who had been hiding behind the door until he was killed by number 4. Drifting and the others probably didn't know. Oh, Drifting didn't know. He nodded and said, then there's only the 4 of us. The 3 of us can go out and tell the guild that we've killed all the targets. Maybe they won't believe us and stay, but if you wait patiently they'll leave. Then with your strength, it won't be hard for you to get out. But I feel like you won't compromise, Drifting said. That's right, Gu Fei said. I'm a short-sighted person. I don't know how far I can go. I just want to teach you 3 a lesson. As for how to get out, that's for later, right? If that's the case. Drifting had no choice but to raise his staff. Chapter 474. Drifting's spellcasting technique was very refined and powerful. It was especially difficult to dodge in a room like this. Drifting seemed to have done some special research on spellcasting in a room, so he was even more talented in this aspect. Gu Fei did not dare to be careless. Seeing that Drifting was about to make a move, Gu Fei hurriedly launched his killer move. Teleportation and double flame flash. Ice Shadow. Drifting, who had been practicing spells for a long time, was also very fast. He instantly completed the chant. Gu Fei slashed down with his sword, and Drifting was cut into pieces. The ice fell to the ground, and steam rose up. Fake. Gu Fei hurriedly looked around and was shocked. Of the 4 drifters created by the Ice Shadow spell, 1 was smashed by him. 2 were in the other 2 corners of the room, and 1 had actually floated out of the window. And it was this person outside the window who smiled and waved at Gu Fei, saying, I'll make a move first, Brother Qianli. After saying that, he began to descend. Without waiting for Gu Fei to react, another silhouette had already flashed to the side of the window. With a leap, the silhouette had already leapt out. It was Left Hand Right's Love. With a horse-spurring meteor, he also leapt out of the window. Gu Fei hurriedly chased them out of the window, and saw the 2 people who were still falling. He grabbed Drifting's legs with his left hand, and threw himself into the air, just before they hit the ground. Just like that, Drifting was flung out. Even though he took damage from the skill, he didn't suffer any damage from falling. Drifting was still alive after he landed. Love's left hand used Flying Swallow Slash to kick the wall. His body flew out and changed the direction of his fall. Even though he landed hard and rolled a few times, he was still alive. At the same time, the door behind him opened. Gu Fei looked back, and saw that Love Left Hand had also run out. Gu Fei sighed and did not chase. Love Left Hand was number 6. When he lured Gu Fei to join the team, Gu Fei wanted to catch up to him and see his face, but he did not succeed. Their speed was about the same. At this time, Gu Fei also received a message from Drifting. Why did you chase them outside the window? I can't help you now. Gu Fei sneered. He knew that Drifting meant that when you reach the window, the people below have already seen you. So I can't cover for you. This explanation seemed to be valid, but the 2 of them had jumped off the building one after another, so it was only normal for him to chase after them and take a look, right? With Drifting's meticulous thinking, he should have thought of this. This guy simply felt that confronting Gu Fei head-on was not a good idea, so he turned around and ran away. In the end, he even complained that Gu Fei didn't understand him. He was really mean. Gu Fei didn't reply to his message, but his message came again. How are you going to escape? I'm really curious. I'll be waiting in the courtyard to enjoy your performance. Gu Fei smiled again. How could he escape? In fact, he had already thought of an idea. Although it was not a very kind idea, he had no choice but to use it. Gu Fei left the house and went up to the 3rd floor. He came to Giordano's guard room. After talking to Giordano, he immediately began to praise Gu Fei's actions. Obviously, the daily task had been completed. Then he gave out the experience and money reward. Gu Fei was curious about what would happen to apple vinegar. Unfortunately, he couldn't get any information from Giordano. After looking at the time, Gu Fei buried his head in the sofa and fell asleep. In the courtyard outside the government office, Drifting and Love Left Hand looked very embarrassed. No one would have thought that the two of them had actually jumped out of the window. Everyone thought that the two of them had survived the disaster. He's really a master. Everyone saw the mage standing by the window and thought that he must be the one who had sent Drifting and the others flying out of the window. They also had an archer. Was he dead? While they were thinking, Love Left Hand stumbled out of the government office. He looked very miserable. He said as soon as he saw someone, too strong. At this time, 3 Sighs Flowing Maple had already rushed to Drifting's side. Brother Drifting, you've worked hard. He didn't rush to ask about the task, but first showed his concern for his companions. 3 Sighs Flowing Maple was a leader who paid attention to details. Drifting smiled and said with slight regret, Unfortunately, we still couldn't complete it. Everyone looked at the window upstairs. At this time, Gu Fei had already left. How many people are left in the building? 3 Sighs Flowing Maple asked. 1, Drifting replied. Are the others dead? 3 Sighs Flowing Maple was quite happy. If Drifting hadn't been there, they could only watch as a few people ran around the government office. Who knew what kind of trouble they would cause? Now that there was only one person left, it was much less troublesome. They're all taken care of, but this one is too hard to deal with, Drifting said. Yes. Leave the rest to us, 3 Sighs Flowing Maple said. Drifting and the other 2 came out of the building in miserable states. 3 Sighs Flowing Maple was too embarrassed to say, You guys go in and try again. Drifting nodded and retreated to the side with Love Left Hand and Love Right Hand. They looked at the window where Gu Fei had left, deep in thought. What is this guy going to do? I'm really curious, Drifting thought. His magic power isn't strong enough. It won't be enough for him to kill his way out of the courtyard. Besides, he has too many PK points. If he kills a few players, he will attract the attention of the NPC guards. There are more than 1 or 2 guards in the courtyard. I'm afraid he won't be able to provoke them, right? While Drifting was thinking, 3 Sighs Flowing Maple had already started to make arrangements. Everyone focus. Don't miss the front and back doors, and all the windows. If you find anyone, kill them on the spot. Yes. Everyone in the courtyard shouted in unison. Drifting and the others had successfully killed several people who had entered the government office. Only 1 survivor was left, which was a great boost to their morale. So noisy. Hearing the loud shouts outside, Gu Fei mumbled discontentedly. He turned over and went back to sleep. As time ticked by, the members of Flower gazing through the fog stared at the building without blinking. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour, 1.5 hours. Everyone felt tired. Maybe that guy had forcefully gone offline, and everyone was waiting like idiots. Someone guessed. No, he's still here. Drifting, who was a good friend of Gu Fei, answered everyone's questions. At the same time, he was also curious about what Gu Fei was doing in the building. Was he killing time to get rid of his PK points? How long would it take? Or was he fighting with Giordano? That was even more impossible. There were so many NPC guards in that room. Since he knew about Gu Fei's quest, Drifting had specifically looked for Giordano's location. His conclusion was the same as Gu Fei's. There was no chance for him to attack. What the hell is he doing? Drifting was a little anxious. Flowing Maple Three Sighs, who cared about the quest the most, was even more anxious. This guy had been hiding in the government office for so long. They really didn't know what he was doing. Flowing Maple Three Sighs had wanted to invite Drifting and the other two players who had permission to go in and take a look, but he had resisted the urge several times. This time, after hesitating for a while, he finally stood up and walked over. "Brother Drifting, I haven't seen this guy for so long. What do you think is going on?" Flowing Maple Three Sighs asked. "I'm not sure. But there shouldn't be any other exit in this building. I've checked. Besides, there are many guards in the building, so he doesn't have a chance to do anything. He hasn't come out for so long. I really don't know what he's doing," Drifting said. Oh, Drifting's words dispelled Flowing Maple Three Sighs' doubts. He was indeed worried that Gu Fei was planning to blow up the entire building. "This guy hasn't come out for so long and we're all very anxious. Should I trouble you three, who have permission, to go in and take a look?" Flowing Maple Three Sighs finally made this request. Drifting immediately thought, "Is this it? This guy knows that if we wait for too long, we won't be able to bear it. Naturally, he will invite me in again. Then he will wait inside to take me down to vent his anger." As Drifting thought about it, he felt that it was more and more possible. He knew that it might be a trap, but he wasn't stupid enough to take the risk. Thus, he rejected Flowing Maple Three Sighs' request. "This guy is very powerful. The three of us aren't his match. If we go in and meet him again, I'm afraid we won't be able to come out alive." "I see. Then let's think of another way." Flowing Maple Three Sighs smiled faintly and then left. Of course, he was very unhappy. Although it was normal for people to be selfish, he still hoped that his guild members would have a high level of awareness and wouldn't be afraid of sacrifices or difficulties for the benefit of the guild. Drifting obviously didn't have such a high level. This kind of person, no matter how high his level was, would be of limited help to the guild. Flowing Maple Three Sighs thought. Thus, the waiting continued. Some guild players were already discussing in private. "It's been so long. If this guy really wanted to ruin our quest, he would have already ruined it. If we wait outside like idiots, other than venting our anger, what else can we do?" Thus, the leaders of the guild, led by Flowing Maple Three Sighs, hurriedly came out to comfort the players. They conveyed the core idea of the guild not being arrogant and impatient. They told the players to stick to the general policy of building the guild and continue to wait patiently. In his speech, Flowing Maple Three Sighs pointed out, "Right now, the opponent is loosening the reins only to grasp them better. He's purposely stalling for time to numb our thoughts and disarm us. He wants us to use this opportunity to create chaos within ourselves. Thus, the opponent of this battle is actually not anyone else but ourselves. As long as we get rid of the distracting thoughts in our hearts and wholeheartedly serve the guild, we will definitely win in the end." Flowing Maple Three Sighs' speech caused a strong response. In the midst of the cheers, the members who were looking at the flowers in the fog all expressed that they would stand their ground until the last moment before they went offline. Time continued to pass. The sun gradually began to move to the west. It was already the afternoon of a day in the game. Suddenly, a muffled sound broke the silence. The front door of the government office had been opened. After waiting for nearly 3 hours, was it finally going to bear fruit? Chapter 475. The silence in the courtyard was broken by the sound of the door opening. All the players moved upon hearing the sound. They pointed their weapons at the door of the government office. The few melee characters standing at the door even raised their weapons. However, everyone's movements quickly froze. The person who walked out of the building was their quest issuer, Giordano. No one dared to slight him. All the players consciously made way for Giordano. After staying in the courtyard for so long, everyone was very familiar with Master Qiao's stroll route. However, a figure flashed. Gu Fei had already appeared behind Giordano with a smile on his face. Everyone screamed in surprise. Just as they were about to move, Gu Fei flipped his hand and placed the night streak beside Giordano. "Don't move." Everyone heard Gu Fei shout. Everyone was stunned. Then they heard their guild leader, Three Sighs of Flowing Maple, shout in the guild channel, "Don't move." This guy actually did this. He was too despicable. Although 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple had given the order to not move, he was gritting his teeth in anger. He had a strong desire to tear Gu Fei into pieces. However, he had to remind himself again and again that he had to look at the bigger picture. A lack of forbearance in small matters would spoil the bigger plan. Giordano was completely unaffected by the situation in front of him. He continued to walk on his own. Gu Fei followed beside him. His hand was steady, and the sword was very close. Stand back. Gu Fei reminded the group of players in front of him who were looking at him with hatred. At this moment, everyone understood the stakes of Gu Fei's actions. If their quest issuer was attacked, what kind of punishment would they receive for completing their quest? This was something that they did not dare to imagine. It was because of this that Gu Fei planned to use an NPC as a hostage. This was an unprecedented hostage situation. The hostage did not seem to be aware of his situation. He did not cooperate, nor did he resist. He continued to walk on his own path. The kidnapper did not threaten Giordano's life at all. He just raised his sword lazily and maintained a very close distance with Giordano. As long as he tilted his sword slightly, he would be able to complete an attack. The courtyard was quiet again. No one dared to act rashly. Everyone was dumbfounded as they watched Gu Fei and Giordano walk away. The rustling of their footsteps was extremely ear-piercing. In contrast to the silence in the stadium, the guild channel was in full swing. After everyone condemned Gu Fei's shamelessness, they immediately began to come up with a plan. And there were only a few ideas. Archers would snipe, thieves would sneak in. Amidst the discussions, the players who were thieves and archers all volunteered. They were extremely enthusiastic, but the decision on how to proceed was still left to the guild leader, 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple. 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple's face darkened, and he couldn't make up his mind. This was because Gu Fei was too close to Giordano. Moreover, he did not need to kill the target. As long as he completed a casual attack, it would be the same as killing the hostage. Such a simple act of killing the hostage would make it extremely difficult for them to rescue the hostage. Whether it was long-range sniping or sneaking in, it was extremely risky. At this time, 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple had gradually gotten over his initial impulse when he saw Gu Fei's actions. He began to calmly consider the problem. There was no need to take this risk. Even if they killed this guy now, they would only be venting their anger. To the guild, there would be no benefits. To their guild, the quest completion rate was the most important thing. Giordano's appearance was the time to announce the completion rate. Today, after the ruckus caused by this group of people, they really did not know how low the quest completion rate had fallen. If it had already fallen to 0, then they would not need to care about Gu Fei's threat at all. With this thought in mind, 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple finally made a decision. Not only did he not give the order to attack, but he also had the guild members make way for him. He even took the initiative to clear the path to the courtyard's entrance. When Gu Fei saw this, he saved himself some trouble. He could not change Giordano's path. If he followed Giordano, he would always be a distance away from the courtyard's main entrance. Gu Fei originally wanted to force 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple to make way for him. However, when he saw that 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple had already guessed his thoughts and took the initiative to clear the path, he did not need to say anything more. Guild leader Flowing Maple, you really know the big picture, haha. When Gu Fei saw 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple and a few others appear in his field of vision, he laughed and greeted them. His smile was slightly forced because he did not feel very proud of what he had done. Even though the entire guild had been suppressed by this move, 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple naturally could not smile. Flowing Maple 3 Sighs obviously couldn't bring himself to laugh. With a cold expression, he said, "Everyone is just doing this for the mission." "Long live you understand, long live you understand," Gu Fei said. 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple's eyes flashed, but he did not reply. At this time, he had already arrived at the place where Giordano was going to stop. Here he could ask about their quest completion rate. At this time, Gu Fei had already chosen his escape route. On this route he did not discover any suspicious points. "Then, I'll take my leave first," Gu Fei said. 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple did not say anything. He did not want to say goodbye to Gu Fei at all. Gu Fei sighed deeply. He did not have any ill feelings towards 3 sides of flowing maple and flowers in flowing maple. It was just that the mode of the quest had pushed the two of them into opposing sides. More importantly, in the words of Brother Yu and the others, Gu Fei's quest was something that he had imagined himself. Because of this, he had affected the other guild's quest and exhausted their efforts. It was inevitable that Gu Fei felt a little guilty. What made him feel even more guilty was that after causing such a ruckus, there was no progress in the quest at all. This meant that if he wanted to continue, he would have to come back and cause trouble again. He would have to give flowers and flowing maple another headache. I think it's better not to tell them about this. This is not good news for them. Gu Fei sighed as he quickly escaped from Giordano's side. Looking back, he saw that no one had attacked him. How trustworthy. Gu Fei felt even more guilty as he thought about it. However, this layer of guilt did not last long. Just when Gu Fei was about 30 meters away from Giordano, a distance that even a long-range mage could not reach, a tsunami of curses suddenly erupted from behind him. What was the meaning of being condemned by the masses? Gu Fei suddenly had a personal understanding of it. Following that, arrows from the archers who could still attack at this distance flew over like a swarm of locusts. Following that, Gu Fei saw some people flash out from the exit of the courtyard, firmly guarding the door. At the same time, the thieves who were lying in ambush on this path also began to appear, brazenly charging towards Gu Fei. Sure enough, it's not that easy. Gu Fei lamented, but he did not feel flustered. This was because this situation was within his expectations. He did not expect that after being sent halfway by Giordano, the flowers and flowing maple would continue to quietly watch him walk the other half. So the moment he left Giordano's side, he was surprised that he was not attacked. In this way, it seemed that this was just the other party being cautious. The other party wanted to completely confirm the safety of the hostages before carrying out a sudden attack on him, the kidnapper. It was not a surprising arrangement. If there was no such arrangement, it would be surprising. Gu Fei suddenly turned his head and changed his direction. This made the flowers in flowing maple, who had already shifted their focus to the exit, very surprised. And this new path was also what Gu Fei had been eyeing for a long time. A shortcut that was not guarded by anyone, a shortcut to the wall. Along the way, Gu Fei had only encountered 3 robbers who tried to stop him. He didn't go all out. With a feint and a fancy footwork, the thief was already behind him, turning around and chasing again. Gu Fei's speed was not fake. Not any thief could catch up to him. And these 3 common thieves belonged to the category that could not catch up to him. Before he reached the bottom of the wall, Gu Fei's flying hook had already shot out, and with a swing, he had already caught the top of the wall. He ran, jumped, and stepped on the wall. His movements were done in one breath. In the blink of an eye, Gu Fei had already climbed 5 meters, and as he climbed, he put away the end of the rope. The thieves who had chased him to the bottom of the wall could only look up and sigh. The only threat that could pose was the archer. After all, it was difficult to climb and dodge at the same time. When Gu Fei successfully climbed to the top of the wall, he was still hit by 2 arrows. There really aren't that many experts. Gu Fei sighed after noticing the damage of these 2 arrows. The damage of these 2 arrows was mediocre, and it could not compare to the damage of a powerful person like Yutian Shenming. After throwing the arrows that he had pulled out of the wall, Gu Fei had already turned around and jumped down from the other side. When he landed, he was already in the fog, and his escape was successful. The flowers and flowing maple did not continue to chase after him, because at this time, 3 sides of flowing maple had already finished talking to Giordano. What greatly surprised him was that although the quest completion rate had decreased, it was far less than he had expected. After such a big fuss, 3 sides of flowing maple would not be surprised if they directly deducted 0 points. However, this result made him feel quite excited. The quest completion rate had only decreased by 5%. After 3 sides of flowing maple announced this result in the guild, everyone was satisfied. It's only 5 points. It's not much. I thought it would all be deducted. Most of the people who thought this way were in a good mood at this time. It seems that we were a little too nervous, someone said. These people might not be here to deliberately cause trouble. They might really be here for a quest. Someone said. But we still decreased by 5 points. Maybe we don't care about them, and just let them complete the quest calmly. Then it won't happen again. But who knows if they are real or not? Sigh, it's hard to predict people's hearts. The discussion became more and more profound. At this time, 3 sighs of Flowing Maple's brows were tightly knitted. This was because he had already learned from drifting that the most difficult person to deal with would definitely come again. And his quest would definitely cause the flowers in Flowing Maple to suffer heavy losses. Assassinate Giordano. Chapter 476. Flowing Maple 3 sighs placed a lot of importance on Gu Fei. This person had strength, methods and courage. Even though he was alone, he was still a very difficult opponent to deal with. However, when Flowing Maple 3 sighs announced this news in the guild, it set off a wave of commotion. Many guild members expressed that if this guy dared to come again, they would definitely teach him a lesson. This kind of reaction made Flowing Maple 3 sighs sigh endlessly. Sure enough, everyone played the game for fun. It was better to have less trouble. This kind of peaceful life attitude had no market in the game. This guy is still very difficult to deal with. Everyone, don't underestimate him just because he's alone. Flowing Maple 3 sighs reminded everyone in the guild. After that, they began to rearrange the defense. Because they had personally witnessed Gu Fei's ultimate skill of crossing walls like it was a flat plane. There was a sentry every 3 steps and a sentry every 5. The defense was even more thorough than the main entrance of the courtyard. At this time, Gu Fei went to find Scissorhands after leaving the municipal courtyard. He was prepared to hand over the quest item that he wanted. Scissorhands, who had completed the quest, was naturally extremely grateful. He expressed that he would go through fire and water for Gu Fei on the spot. That's not necessary. Gu Fei hurriedly said. However, there's a small matter that I don't know if you can help me with. Go ahead. Scissorhands hurriedly said. I heard that players who play the profession of tailoring can modify the appearance of a player's equipment when they reach a certain level. Look, I have a belt here. Gu Fei said as he pulled out the wolf's brand, belt that he felt was extremely vulgar. I wonder if I can modify it. Belt? That's easy. How do you want to modify it? Scissorhands was very happy to be able to help Gu Fei. The main thing is this wolf head buckle. I wonder if I can fix it. Don't you think this wolf head buckle is very vulgar? Gu Fei said. A little. The size of the wolf's head does not match the width and color of the belt. The craftsmanship of the belt is rather rough. Some might say that it exudes a sense of wildness. But from my perspective, this so-called wildness is not intentional. It's a result of the craftsman's lack of artistry and craftsmanship. He is unable to carve out the meaning that he wishes to convey. And that is why this situation is so confusing. Conceptually speaking, Scissorhands studied the design of the belt, and from his professional point of view, he immediately gave the belt an analysis. Wait a minute. Gu Fei interrupted Scissors and asked carefully, Are you speaking Chinese? I don't understand. Just tell me if you can change it. Gu Fei said. I can, but I'm afraid I can't do it alone. Scissorhands said. Why? Gu Fei didn't understand. This belt is not just a product of the tailor class. This wolf head buckle is the core part of the belt. However, it belongs to the blacksmith class. Therefore, to completely change the design of this belt, we will need the cooperation of at least a high-level blacksmith player, Scissorhands said. Gu Fei immediately opened the mercenary channel. Experts, is there anyone with a high blacksmith skill? No one answered. Therefore, Gu Fei asked again. The Han family young master finally replied. Do you know that your question is very stupid? Even though there are not many types of life skills in the parallel world, the content is very large and it is very difficult to improve. Players who have the energy to level up will not be able to reach our current level. If you want to find a high-level blacksmith, go to the newbie market. Don't come to my elite team. Is that so? Gu Fei was confused. He then asked Scissorhands, What level are you? Level 32. It's not easy to level up a life skill, right? Yes. For the sake of this blueprint, I put in another level, Scissorhands said. Gu Fei patted him and then asked, "Where can I find a high-level blacksmith? Do you know anyone?" "I know one, but he is not online right now," Scissorhands said regretfully. "Oh, it's good that you know someone. I'm not in a hurry. It's about time for me to go offline. Hold on to the belt for now. I'll come find you tomorrow. It won't take too long to change it, right?" Gu Fei said. As long as I'm here, the changes will be done quickly." Scissorhands looked at the belt that Gu Fei had stuffed into his hands. He could even see the attributes of the belt. Not to mention the content, just the purple text was glowing. To casually hand such equipment to someone else, how much of a person did that require? Scissorhands looked at Gu Fei in a daze. He saw Gu Fei say to him, "Then I'll find you tomorrow." After saying that, he left. Gu Fei quickly went to the revival point and went offline. This was really disappointing news for the players who were looking at things through the fog. At that moment, it was late at night in the real world. Many experts of the stay-up-late class were logging in one after another. After hearing about the events of the day, they were ready to fight it out with this expert. However, they received news that he had already gone offline. The long night made it even more difficult for them to sleep. This guy's online time is relatively stable. Usually, he'll be online from after dinner to 10 o'clock. Normally, he won't be online for more than 3 hours. Drifting Maple 3 Size continued to explain what he knew about Gu Fei. This kind of activity is like an office worker. How can there be experts like this? Flowing Maple 3 Size was surprised. Experts were all built up over time. It was hard to imagine that a guy who only played for 3 hours a day would be a first-rate expert in the game in terms of level, skill, and equipment. Something like this. Drifting gave a brief introduction of Gu Fei's kung fu. This was no longer a secret among the group of people who went on a mission with Reigning the Four Seas to Sunset City. Everyone knew that Gu Fei was so strong because of his kung fu. Kung fu. Flowing Maple 3 Size did not appear surprised like the others. It was as if he was not completely unfamiliar with this. Guild Master Flowing Maple. Have you heard of this? Drifting noticed the abnormality in Flowing Maple 3 Size words. Yes. Flowing Maple 3 Size nodded. Our city also has a player who claims to know Kung Fu. His name is Wind Cord, one of the top 10 Grandmasters of Combat. He doesn't have any guild or mercenary group background. He's a loner and loves to help others. He's very famous in our city and has a good reputation. Grandmaster of Combat. Number 1 on the Grandmasters of Combat ranking, one of the top 5. He also knows Kung Fu. There's also a mercenary group in Sunset City that gathers a bunch of people like him. Most of them are Grandmasters of Combat, Drifting said. Yes, the Grandmaster of Combat class seems to be closer to Kung Fu, so people like this class. Flowing Maple 3 Size said. Then what about Qianli? Why would he choose a mage? Mages and Grandmasters are obviously not reliable. Drifting said. Challenge himself? Surpass the limit? Flowing Maple 3 Size raised Gu Fei's level of thinking. Drifting didn't deny it. He only said, according to my observation, normal players don't have the ability to fight against this kind of person. You've seen how Qianli can come and go freely among so many of us. I think it's best to ask this Wind Cord to deal with him. We can try, but this person doesn't seem to like guilds or mercenary groups. I'm not sure if it'll work, Flowing Maple 3 Size said. Let's try first, Drifting suggested. Flowing Maple 3 Size nodded, and immediately started to think of a way to contact this Grandmaster of Combat, Wind Cord. On the other hand, Sword Demon had already contacted 100 Grandmasters of Combat, who was online at night. The two had also completed the transaction. The income of thousands of gold coins made 100 Grandmasters of Combat so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. When he sent a message to the middleman, Gu Fei, he saw that Gu Fei was sleeping soundly on the sofa in Giordano's room and didn't reply. Sword Demon thought that Gu Fei was in full swing for the quest, so he didn't dare to disturb him again. 100 Grandmasters of Combat was immersed in the joy of the jingling of money and didn't pay much attention to any other details. He sent another message, but Gu Fei didn't reply, so he thought that Gu Fei was busy and didn't disturb him again. As for Brother Yu and the other two who were on their way to Forest Shade City, their journey was relatively smooth. However, they encountered some trouble when they were inquiring about the log cabin in the oak forest. They asked passers-by about the oak forest, and they could point to a piece of it. In Forest Shade City, oak trees weren't rare at all. They had no choice but to ask the boss of the area, Water Depth, for help. But for some reason, Water Depth seemed to be in a very bad mood at this time, and refused all visitors. The three of them could only helplessly wander in the woods around Forest Shade City, asking people if there was an oak forest nearby, if there was a log cabin in the oak forest, and if there was an NPC in the cabin. Such efforts weren't in vain. At 3:37 in the morning, the three of them actually found a log cabin in an oak forest in the woods of Forest Shade City, and saw an NPC called Gru in the cabin. "It's here!" Brother Yu shouted excitedly. Gru was a blonde young man with a calm face. Brother Yu showed him all the quest skills he had mastered, but it was all in vain. Whether it was the mention of the Hayes assassin Andrew Su, the Assassin's League, or the quest to assassinate Giordano, Gru always smiled and shook his head in response. "There's no other way. It seems that we have to use the diary as a prop." Brother Yu sighed. "But Qianli isn't online right now," Yu Tianshiming said. "He'll be online tomorrow night." And Scathed in Battle said, "I really want to die." Brother Yu said. The long night was finally over. For Gu Fei, it was just an ordinary night on an ordinary day, but in the game, a large group of people were in a mess because of him. On the side of Flowers in the Fog Guild alone, they had no less than 10 guild meetings to discuss how to deal with this guy tomorrow. Drifting had basically relayed all the information he had to them. Not only did they know how scary Gu Fei was, but they also knew that he had a group of scary friends. A child elite group organized by Han Family Young Master, which was a gathering of well-known names in the online gaming world. In the mercenary group tournament, 6 people wiped out 80 people. Chapter 477. Looking at the flowers in the fog, he spent the night and the day nervously but not absent-mindedly. Based on the existence of Gu Fei's companions, 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple made several adjustments to their defense strategy until he felt that it was foolproof. At that moment, Drifting announced that Gu Fei was online. Everyone in the guild was on high alert, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. At that moment, 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple was glad that Drifting was in the guild. Just the notification of their opponent's login and offline saved them a lot of trouble. Gu Fei, who was online, immediately felt the crowd's expectations. During this period, Brother Yu had sent him more than 20 messages even though he knew that Gu Fei wasn't online. This meant that he hoped that Gu Fei would appear soon. At that moment, when Gu Fei appeared, Brother Yu sent him 3 messages. Diary. Send it. Quick. One sentence was split into 3 messages. Brother Yu's eagerness was evident. Found it. Gu Fei replied leisurely as he walked out of the offline area. Yeah. If I can't get the quest, it must be because I need the quest item, Brother Yu said. Alright, I'll send it over. Gu Fei said. I'll be guarding the mailbox, Brother Yu replied. After ending the call with Brother Yu, Gu Fei opened Scissorhand's message. The belt has been fixed and sent to you. You can change it if you're not satisfied. Gu Fei saw that it was perfect. He went to his mailbox and found that both problems could be dealt with. He checked his friend list and saw that Scissorhand wasn't online. He left a message to express his gratitude. He rushed to the mailbox and first sent Andrew Su's diary to Brother Yu. Then he found the belt that Scissorhand had sent. When he opened it, he found that there was no reference. This was because Gu Fei had no impression of what the belt originally looked like. However, at least the belt in front of him was like what Gu Fei had expected. It had erased the original wretched look, which made him feel extremely satisfied. He once again left a message to Scissorhand to express his approval of his work. After leaving the mailbox, Gu Fei ran off to carry out the bounty quest. If he didn't clear the PK points on him, it would be inconvenient for him to move around in the government compound. As a result, after clearing more than 20 PK points, Gu Fei looked at the time. It seemed that it was getting late. He felt that it would be better to go to the government office to continue the quest when he had enough time. So he simply focused on completing the wanted quest until he went offline. When Gu Fei logged into the game, all the members of Up and Down waited in the courtyard like watchdogs. In the end, Gu Fei didn't even show his face. When Drifting told everyone that Gu Fei had gone offline, everyone felt like they had been played. In the blink of an eye, another day and night had passed. When Gu Fei went online again, the first thing he received was Brother Yu's unparalleled resentment. He held Andrew Su's diary in his hand and spent more than 2 hours at Gru's place. He almost wanted to read the diary aloud, but Gru didn't move at all. He responded to Brother Yu with the same attitude as the day before yesterday. This could only mean one thing. He had the item, but he didn't accept the quest. The three of them, who had made a wasted trip, were quite depressed. Their confident analysis turned out to be wrong in the end, which also made Brother Yu feel very embarrassed. The three of them were dispirited in Forest Shade City, and they didn't mention coming to Xiaowu City to meet up with everyone. Gu Fei was in high spirits at this time. Yesterday he washed off all the PK points, and today he came a little early. He was ready to go to the government office to make a scene. After listening to Brother Yu's long-winded and irresponsible words of comfort, he immediately went to greet Sword Demon, saying that there might be some meaningful things to do today, and asked if he wanted to participate. Sword Demon readily agreed. The two arranged a place to meet, and they went to the government office together. Is the new skill good? Gu Fei was too lazy to use messages to chat unless he had no other choice. It was already the day before yesterday that the Sword Ghost had obtained the skill scroll from the 100 Eras strategist, and he had only asked about it today. Sword Demon didn't have time to speak. Just by looking at his excited expression, Gu Fei already knew the answer. What new discoveries did you make in your quest? Sword Demon asked Gu Fei again. The day before yesterday, I actually went to the government office with a group of people. Gu Fei told him about the 9 people. Sword Demon listened with great interest, and his eyes flashed with envy from time to time. It seemed that he was a little tired of the old-fashioned game life of leveling up, farming equipment, and running quests every day. He also looked forward to Gu Fei's exciting game life. I didn't expect Drifting to be so scheming. Sword Demon sighed after listening to the story. Yes. Are you familiar with him? Gu Fei found that he really didn't know much about this person. Sword Demon shook his head and said, Yutian might be slightly familiar with him. Yutian? Does Drifting count as a human in his eyes? Gu Fei said. Probably not. The two agreed that Yutian Shenming, who despised and ridiculed Drifting, wouldn't be able to get any meaningful information about Drifting. Then what did you find in the process? Sword Demon asked. Remember the number 7 I just talked about? Gu Fei said. The one who was looking for the sleeping assassin in the yard? Sword Demon laughed. Among the 9 people, there were a few people who died that were quite a joke. Yes, the key was the assassin he was looking for. Gu Fei said. What is it? The assassin's attire is very similar to Haze's. Gu Fei said. What is it? Around here. Gu Fei patted his left arm. There's something embroidered on it. If I remember correctly, it's the symbol of an organization called Assassin's Alliance that Haze mentioned in his diary. Gu Fei said. There's something like that? Gu Fei nodded. I remember that the Haze assassin also had one on his left arm, and there was also a silly doodle in his diary where he drew this thing. What you're saying is that this sleeping assassin and the Haze shadow assassin belong to the same organization, so they might have the same mission. Sword Ghost said. Gu Fei nodded. Then you want to wake him up? What kind of breakthrough do you want to find from him? Sword Demon said. It seems more useful if he's asleep. Gu Fei said. Why? Haze's assassin once mentioned in his diary that when an assassin lies down to sleep, he will always point his feet in the direction he wants to go. Gu Fei said. I have an impression. Sword Demon said. So although this assassin is asleep, he just happened to let us know where he's going. Yes. I've already seen the direction he's pointing in. It's a small woodshed in the backyard. Maybe there are some clues hidden there. Gu Fei said. Clues. I've completely grasped Giordano's daily routine in the game. Unfortunately, he's never alone. There's always a large group of system guards around him. And outside the government office, there's also those foggy guys. So I think to assassinate this guy, there might be some special methods. Maybe the direction pointed out by this sleeping assassin is the method we're looking for. Gu Fei said. Your analysis makes sense. Sword Demon couldn't help but nod, but in the end he added with his usual seriousness, if it's not a game. Huh. As a game, it's hard to imagine that the goal of other people's missions would have such a connection with your assassination. Sword Demon said. Normal games might not, but this game I think it's possible. Gu Fei said. No matter what, we can always try. If that's really the case, then it looks like we should really change the way we think about the game. Sword Demon said thoughtfully. Now let's go to the mailbox to get the diary. Gu Fei patted Sword Demon. From the mailbox, he took the diary that brother you had sent back. Gu Fei quickly flipped to the Haze Assassin's graffiti and nodded. There's no mistake, this is the pattern. Sword Demon looked at it and shook his head, indicating that he had no impression of this pattern on the Haze Assassin. Now we're going to break through the wall again, Gu Fei said. He wasn't stupid. He didn't forget that Drifting was the mastermind behind the 9 people. So his mission goal was to assassinate Giordano. Right now everyone probably knew. They dared to assassinate their mission publisher. He didn't know to what extent these guys would upgrade their defense mode. This level was quickly seen by Gu Fei and Sword Demon. At this time, there were actually people guarding the outer wall of the government office. The two hid in the fog a few times and found that it was the same. Sword Demon sighed. Looks like they were tortured badly by you last time. Gu Fei was also helpless. They're too strong, they can't even climb the wall. Looks like we have to kill one, Sword Demon said. They probably didn't think of letting one person defend against me, right? Kill one, expose our existence, and then a large group will surround us, Gu Fei said. If that's the case, we have to kill a few more to confuse them, Sword Demon said. Yes, I like this bold method, Gu Fei praised. Sword Ghoul, on the other hand, started to reflect on himself. Actually, I'm eager to use this new skill in PvP. Gu Fei smiled bitterly. It seemed that everyone had the violent blood of PK flowing in their hearts, but they had to suppress it due to their moral values. Gu Fei continuously issued wanted missions, and Sword Demon came up with such a bold method at this time to find a reasonable excuse for himself to PK. From a certain point of view, everyone was hypocritical. But this kind of hypocrisy was absolutely necessary. Even the system couldn't bear to see Apple Vinegar so calmly and straightforwardly kill if he wanted to, so he directly raised it to a daily wanted mission. As for this guy's punishment, Gu Fei had some guesses, a drop in level. Yesterday, Gu Fei heard that the top 10 thieves list had been updated and Apple Vinegar had disappeared from the list. This matter was quite controversial in Xiaowu City. This executioner who killed people like flies was actually killed by accident. This was something that the people had been eagerly waiting for a long time. And Gu Fei felt that maybe his fight with Apple Vinegar, although it was a wanted mission, had to be punished for PK. This more or less reflected the difference between a daily and a normal mission. Chapter 478. So let's do it. After a moment of silence, the two looked at each other and said. Then they nodded firmly. As long as they made up their minds, there would be no doubt or hesitation. Gu Fei and Sword Demon happen to be such people. We don't have to kill them on my side and on your side. We can just harass them and make them confused about our direction. Then we can choose a random place to climb the wall. What do you think? Gu Fei asked Sword Demon. Very good. Sword Demon agreed. The two began to move. For the defenders on the outside, this was a disaster. In the eyes of these ordinary players, not to mention Gu Fei, even Sword Demon was an expert that they could only look up to. Moreover, Sword Demon's new skill, Fog Ambush, although it was dropped from the Fog Assassin, it was a skill that Fog Assassin had never used before. The skill started like a warrior's charge. When it was cast, the player would have a movement speed and impact that far exceeded the character's normal state. For a thief who moved fast to begin with, it was unbelievably fast. Another feature was that during the activation of this skill, the player could enter stealth at any time. In this state, the player's movement speed would not be reduced at all. Although the duration was only 2 seconds, it was definitely a very valuable 2 seconds. Just think about it, approaching at such a high speed was already a headache. Suddenly disappearing when approaching would be even more difficult to defend against. Even after hearing this feature, Gu Fei felt that it was very difficult to deal with this skill. After all, humans weren't machines. Their attacks weren't so rigid. If it was full of changes, it would be difficult for Gu Fei to have the confidence to grasp it every time. As a result, Sword Demon became even more of a nightmare for these poor players. They saw an abnormally fast figure suddenly rush out of the fog. The speed was so fast that many people were at a loss. Sword Demon was even more obsessed with familiarizing and practicing the skill. Every time he used the 2 seconds of forced disappearance, he attacked 7 people in a row. 6 people didn't react, and the 7th person reflexively covered his face. The concept of mercy that Sword Demon understood wasn't the same concept as Gu Fei's. He would go all out from the start, but after discovering that the enemy was clearly no match for him, he wouldn't continue to chase them. This was the concept of mercy that he, the #1 expert in the game, understood. Unlike Gu Fei, who deliberately controlled the damage and didn't show mercy, Sword Demon didn't have this kind of PK habit. As a result, 5 of the 7 people who came up were instantly killed on the spot. 2 of them were warriors. Although they weren't heavy armored warriors, it was still an impressive achievement. It was enough to show that this skill was far beyond the level of the current skill. This kind of destructive power was impressively above Gu Fei's magic damage. Such a powerful destructive power was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples. The guild channel of flowers in the fog had already exploded with noise, especially the 2 warriors who had been insta-killed. Up until now, the term insta-kill had never been associated with warriors. Now, however, they were actually insta-killed by a thief. Both of them were in disbelief. Who is it? Flowing Maple 3 Size was bewildered. 1 hit to kill a warrior. This kind of damage was even higher than that Qianli drunk. Where did such a strong enemy come from? A thief? Extremely high damage? Extremely fast? Drifting asked these 3 questions in a row. After getting an affirmative answer, he asked, female? Red. Very beautiful? The answer was, male. Black clothes. Extremely ugly. It's Sword Demon. Drifting quickly got the answer. Sword Demon? That Sword Demon? Yesterday you didn't say that his attack was so strong. Flowing Maple 3 Size said. When Drifting introduced Sword Demon, he sighed with regret. It made people feel that this Sword Demon wasn't as strong as he was in the past. He didn't have the domineering aura of a king of the world. I'm not too sure. He shouldn't be this strong, unless he had a fortuitous encounter recently, Drifting said. If that's the case, then he's here. Before Flowing Maple 3 Size could finish, he was suddenly interrupted by someone beside him. He was dressed in a Grandmaster of Combat's attire. He had been hiding under a big tree beside them. It was the expert Grandmaster of Combat that Flowing Maple 3 Size had specially invited, Feng Xian. Flowing Maple 3 Size originally didn't have any confidence in inviting this expert. He didn't expect things to be so unexpected. After contacting this person through his friend and asking him to help deal with the video mage, this person actually agreed readily. Flowing Maple 3 Size couldn't believe that things had gone so smoothly. When he thought about it again, he could only conclude that martial artists like to compete with each other. Hence, he hadn't taken action to help his guild complete a quest. Instead, he had taken action for his own challenge. As expected, after Feng Xian arrived at the government compound, he didn't care about any of Flowing Maple 3 Size guild meetings, core discussions, or defensive arrangements. As expected, the sunlight here is the best. This was the only thing Feng Xian said after entering the government compound. Then he leaned against the tree and quietly waited for the expert mage to appear. Yesterday, after waiting for an entire day, Flowing Maple 3 Size was worried that the eccentric expert they had invited would become impatient. Who would have thought that the other party did not seem to mind at all? Today he still came on time as soon as he logged in. Without saying a word, he went to the big tree and continued to lean against it. His lazy appearance made Flowing Maple 3 size question this expert that he had high hopes for. He already felt that he couldn't rely on this guy too much. Feng Xian naturally didn't know about the discussion in the guild channel. However, he heard the conversation with Drifting after that. He's here. Flowing Maple 3 size nodded. However, he's still outside the compound. Although they were actually discussing the situation with the Sword Demon, Gu Fei's harassment had appeared at the same time as the Sword Demon. However, it wasn't as shocking as the Sword Demon's. I've already harassed the 7th Corps. What about you? Outside the compound, the Sword Demon was also sending a message to Gu Fei. The 11th Corps. Gu Fei said. So fast. Sword Demon exclaimed. He had already tried his best to be efficient. Who would have thought that Gu Fei would be faster than him? It's more convenient for me. I don't need to do anything. I just need to show my face and they'll start screaming. Gu Fei said. Oh, Sword Demon understood. That's enough, right? Enough. Where do we meet? Sword Ghost randomly chose a coordinate, and the two of them began to rendezvous. At this time, more than 10 places that were under attack began to gather people. Perhaps it wasn't for defense, but to gather more people and gain a sense of security. I don't think the perimeter is for defense. It's just a warning to let the people in the compound know that we've arrived. After meeting up, Gu Fei said. Yes, that's right. Sword Demon agreed with Gu Fei's judgment. So what's next? Let's go. As long as they don't figure out where we're going to break in, our goal will be achieved. Sword Demon said. Gu Fei nodded. The two quickly found a suitable location. Because of the harassment, the perimeter defense was already very scattered at this time, and there were many undefended loopholes. Gu Fei sighed. The defense arrangement is still not in place, but it's so scattered, I think it's still difficult for us to find this kind of blind spot to sneak in. Sword Demon shook his head and said, some things can't be helped. They're just players in the game. How can they have the discipline of an army? That's right. Gu Fei nodded. What's more, if they want to clearly grasp our movements, they need someone to sacrifice themselves. This kind of order can't be given in the game. Sword Demon said. You know it very well. Gu Fei said. Of course I've been through it. Sword Demon laughed. Oh yeah, I forgot. Gu Fei patted his head. He somewhat forgot that Sword Demon was also the boss of a famous guild in the past. How could he not know the rules and regulations of these guilds? However, if there's a guy like Gongzi, this kind of arrangement will definitely be more perfect than them. Gu Fei said again. Hee. Sword Demon laughed dryly. If it was that guy, at this time he would naturally sacrifice the cannon fodder without hesitation. Moreover, he would always find an excuse to make people not aware of the truth. Okay, let's go. Gu Fei had already thrown out 2 flying hooks at this time, and a rope was handed to Sword Demon. After the baptism of that day, Sword Demon was no longer unfamiliar with this movement. He climbed up skillfully. His progress is very fast. Gu Fei said silently in his heart. That day, Sword Demon wasn't so skillful. It seemed that he had practiced in private these 2 days. He even cared about this kind of thing. This guy was really competitive. Immediately, Gu Fei also grabbed the long rope and followed Sword Demon up the wall. It's actually going so smoothly. Gu Fei, who was on the top of the wall, was a little surprised. He said to Sword Demon while collecting the flying hooks. What do you mean? It's been 2 days. I thought they would find a way to climb up the wall, and then arrange guards on the wall. Gu Fei said. This. Sword Demon also helped collect a flying hook and said, probably only you think it's simple? How many people will know what this thing is and how it's made? This kind of claw hook is something that definitely doesn't exist on the market. What mission did you get it from? If you don't say it, even brother you won't be able to guess it. Also, let's not talk about how to climb. I think this thing needs a certain level of skill. It's not that simple, right? It does need a little bit. Gu Fei admitted. That's why I said that even if someone has seen this thing with their own eyes, it's difficult to make it. Sword Demon said. Your analysis makes sense. Gu Fei said. Indeed, in this game environment, Only players like Sword Ghost and the others who were born as gamers would be able to see things more clearly. So what's next? Of course, observe first. Gu Fei took out his binoculars and observed. Chapter 479. Since the position of climbing the wall was not determined by the two of them, they finally chose a place that was relatively close to the backyard. Gu Fei took out his binoculars to observe carefully, and the sword demon waited quietly on the side. After a while, Gu Fei put down the binoculars, and the sword demon looked at him and asked. Gu Fei sighed. The focus of the defense is under the wall, and it is impossible to sneak in. If I had known this, I think it would be no different to go directly through the front door. If we go directly down, we will be drowned in the sea of people's war, Gu Fei said. What about the small woodshed you mentioned? Can we kill our way in? Sword Demon said. It is completely possible, but if we can't get through the door, we will die outside. If we can get in, we will die inside, Gu Fei said, spreading his hands. No wonder the layout outside the wall is not very thorough, because there is no need to be thorough. They only need to know that we are coming, and then the people inside the wall will be more alert, Sword Demon said. Gu Fei nodded. They don't care where we are going to climb over the wall. There are so few people. Sword Demon was filled with emotion, and couldn't help but recall the extraordinary years when he led the Against the Sky Guild. If it was in that era, he could just raise his arm and lead a large number of brothers and sisters to directly crush these guys. Would there be a need to sneak around like now? Diversion is the only way, Gu Fei said. But there are only two of us. If only one of us jumps down, I'm afraid we won't be able to lure them away. Brother Yu and the others are still over at Forest Shade City, and they didn't say whether they will come back or not. Sword Demon began to analyze how they could have more people. Drifting is now an enemy. Gu Fei was also thinking. Strange pupil and Yin Xiaozhu? Sword Demon asked. It seems they are not friends, Gu Fei said. Is there anyone else? Sword Demon thought. I think there's another one, Gu Fei said. Young Master. The two of them said at the same time, and then fell silent. What is Young Master doing? Gu Fei asked the Sword Demon. Sword Demon glanced at Gu Fei, meaning that he shouldn't have asked this question. Gu Fei replied with an "oh" and opened the message. I'll ask him. Are you bored? Ha 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 ha. Gu Fei sent a message to the Han family Young Master. What's the matter? Han family Young Master asked directly. There is a very meaningful job, and I think only you are the most suitable candidate, Gu Fei said. Did you drink too much? You're trying to trick me? The Han family Young Master said. I'll let the Sword Demon talk to you. Gu Fei switched the conversation to the mercenary channel. So the Sword Demon gave a simple explanation, including some of Gu Fei's analysis of Andrew Su's diary. The young master of the Han family, who was drinking in the tavern, suddenly became interested when he saw the content. This seems a little interesting. What I'm thinking is that if the sleeping assassin came for the same purpose as the misty shadow assassin, then there must be something important in the woodshed he pointed at, Gu Fei said. Did you search him? Maybe there's something there, Han family Young Master said. No, I didn't think of this when I was with him, Gu Fei said. He only came up with this idea when he saw number 7 being taken out and killed from the window. He looked down from above, and suddenly noticed the assassin's sleeping posture, and the direction his feet were pointing at. If the conditions allowed it, he would naturally go check it out. Unfortunately, he didn't have the conditions at that time, so he had to start all over again. Brother Yu and the other two, who could also watch the mercenary channel, were also attracted by this analysis. Is this analysis really okay? Brother Yu interrupted doubtfully. Why not? You three came all the way here for nothing. You might as well stay here with me, Gu Fei said. The three were very sad. Gu Fei really touched their sore spot. What you need now is someone to divert attention from the defense of the courtyard. You need to find an opportunity to investigate the sleeping assassin and the woodshed, right? Han family Young Master repeated the difficulties Gu Fei and the Sword Demon were facing. Yes, the two answered together. This isn't something that can be done by one person. We need a team with a certain level of strength, Han family young master said. It will take some time for the three of us to come back. Qianli will also be offline when we come back. Why don't we do it tomorrow? Brother Yu and the other two said. It doesn't seem like it's only the three of you, Han family young master said. The three of them were very depressed. Strange pupil, help me contact her. Han family young master suddenly said. Oh, what do you want? Gu Fei asked. Let's meet at the tavern I'm at. I'll wait for her at the door. Han family young master spoke in the tone of a boss who only gave orders without explaining. Gu Fei was also helpless. When he saw that strange pupil was really there, he tried to contact him. Strange pupil said that he had something to do and that he would be there soon. Gu Fei thanked him profusely. In his heart, he was wondering why Han family young master was looking for strange pupil. Was he trying to borrow this lady's connections? It didn't seem realistic. Gu Fei knew that the Han family's young master would never tell him about this beforehand. It would be more practical to ask strange pupil about it after they met. Do you know what he's up to this time? Gu Fei, who was bored, could only ask the sword ghost. I don't know. Sword demon shook his head. The two of them had no choice but to wait patiently. In comparison, the guild members on the other side of the wall were even more anxious. They had already confirmed that the outer perimeter was under attack. They would ask each other, is he here? Every few seconds until their mouths were dry. Life was unpredictable. Gu Fei and the sword demon were kind, and did not want to harass them like this. However, their simple and crude human wave defense plan left the two of them at their wits' end. They had no choice but to stop their actions and harass them. The two of them on the wall sneezed non-stop. The players who were looking at them in confusion were cursing at them. After some time, Han family young master finally said in the guild channel, "Alright, pay attention to the situation and decide what to do." What did you do? Sword demon asked. I found some helpers, Han family young master replied. Gu Fei was smart enough to send a private message to strange pupil. What did he say to you? He asked about the situation of the guilds and mercenary groups in Xia Fog City, strange pupil said. When Gu Fei heard this, he understood. This trick again. What? Sword demon did not understand. Just like in Waterside City, betraying Jian Nan and the others. This time, it's probably to provoke the guilds here to harass us. Gu Fei said. This method is feasible. Sword demon, who knew how complicated the competition between guilds was, agreed with this plan. Seeing that a guild was about to complete the promotion quest, there would definitely be many guilds that would be extremely unhappy. In reality, there was no need for anyone to instigate them. They would think of ways to cause trouble. Perhaps young Master Han was just trying to convince them that this was a very good opportunity. During the Warring States period, this method was called the Vertical Alliance. Han family young master said. You really are a great politician, diplomat and strategist, Gu Fei said. I thought you already knew. Han family young master said. You guys deal with it yourselves. Of course. Gu Fei and Sword Demon regained their focus. The two had already moved to the top of the wall in the backyard, the position closest to the sleeping assassin. Look, the sleeping assassin is probably in that position. There's a big tree. Do you see it? Gu Fei passed the binoculars to Sword Demon and guided him. Oh, found it. Sword Demon said. You take care of him. I'll go to the firewood shed. Gu Fei pointed to the firewood shed in the corner of the backyard. In order to save time, the two decided to split up. Naturally, they did not know that this small firewood shed was actually Gu Fei's main target. There was no special arrangement for this place. Just like every other inch of the place, there were several players who could see this place. Gu Fei continued to wait patiently on the wall, waiting for the Han family young master to show his might. In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. What's going on? Gu Fei was confused in the channel. Be patient, they need time too. Han family young master said. Sword Demon replied, verifying the reliability of the information, organizing people, and coming up with an attack strategy all require time. Speaking of which, how did you encourage these guilds? Gu Fei asked. Guilds? Who said I encouraged them? Han family young master asked back. Didn't you say? Gu Fei was shocked. You said the method we used to deal with Jiannan counts as a collaboration. I don't think I said it was the same this time, Han family young master said. Gu Fei flipped through the chat records, and in the end, he had to admit that young master Han really didn't say anything. But when Gu Fei and Sword Demon thought this way, this guy did not refute at all. He was purposely causing the two to misunderstand. This kind of thing was clearly meaningless, so why was this guy so excited about it? Gu Fei had the urge to cut someone up. Then what did you do? Sword Demon asked. One of you is a mage and the other is a thief. I just hired some players of the same class to harass them. Han family young master said. Is it possible? The two were confused. It's not possible in other places, but it's possible in Xiaoyu City. Xiaoyu City's special feature was naturally its foggy days. Thieves had stealth and could escape after one attack. Mages, on the other hand, could simply hide in the fog and cast area of effect spells. To impersonate, these two classes did have a certain degree of flexibility. But Gu Fei and Sword Demon had the same thought. Normal players could impersonate each other, but how could they impersonate experts like us? Chapter 480. Two groups of professional players appeared outside the government compound of Xiafog City. One of them was made up of 6 magicians, while the other was made up of 6 bandits. The players leading them were also famous characters in Xiafog City, the magician's strange pupil and the bandit Yin Xiaozhu. When the two sisters found out from their conversation with the Han family young master that they were also here for Gu Fei's quest, they immediately expressed their willingness to help Gu Fei's quest. Therefore, the Han family young master was more than happy to let go of the task, and handed it over to strange pupil, who had more connections. Of course, Gu Fei was the one who paid for the quest. Gu Fei also owed the Han family young master a favor. In the end, the Han family young master was just an intermediary. As for the imitation part, it was just wishful thinking on the part of Gu Fei and the Sword Demon. In fact, the Han family young master did not intend to imitate them at all. He just wanted to create some chaos and distract the enemy. The magicians and bandits introduced by strange pupil were not weaklings either. They were skilled in their techniques. The magicians cast spells randomly in the fog, moving to a different location after casting a spell. The bandits targeted the slower classes. They would sneak up and stab someone before running away. Their style was very similar to the mist assassin. However, a few minutes later, the two groups realized that there was no one under the outer wall of the compound. Sister, where are they? Yin Xiaozhu asked curiously. They seem to have retreated into the compound, strange pupil said. Without the fog in the compound, the harassment tactic could no longer be carried out. The strange pupil sisters did not expect to have nothing to do so soon. They did not know if it was because they had completed their mission. In any case, they first informed Gu Fei of the situation. How could this be? Gu Fei was stunned. They thought that the constant harassment outside the compound would force the enemy to strengthen their forces outside the compound. Therefore, they would mobilize the defensive forces inside the compound. Who knew that the enemy would retreat in order to advance and harass the people outside the compound? Fine, I'll simply withdraw the people outside the courtyard back into the courtyard, so that you won't be able to harass them. Thus, Gu Fei and the Sword Demon smiled bitterly when they saw that the guards in the courtyard did not decrease but instead increased. Hey, your idea doesn't work. Gu Fei sent a message to the Han family young master. The meticulous preparation for an hour had failed so quickly. It really didn't seem like a strategy designed by the Han family young master. What's wrong? Han family young master asked. Gu Fei's words were like this. Nothing changed in the yard. Han family young master asked. Yes, there are more people. Gu Fei said. Be patient and watch, said the Han family young master. What else is there to see? Gu Fei was writing a message to the Han family young master, when he suddenly realized that the confused players in the courtyard had started to move. As if they had heard a summon, The players that were scattered all over the courtyard suddenly began to move toward the front yard. As Gu Fei and the sword demon were in the backyard, most of their vision was blocked by the government office building. They didn't know what was happening in the front yard. Could it be the effect of the harassment? But the harassment had clearly forced the enemy back into the courtyard. Why did they suddenly seem to be redeploying? Of course it's the effect of the harassment, said the Han family young master. The harassment is to simulate you two experts? I really admire you two for having such a genius idea. Have you figured out what they're doing? They're on a mission. The purpose of the mission is to maintain the peace in the broken courtyard. They're not out to chase after you two. If the two of you were just harassing them from the outside, they would be more than happy. Only a ghost would be distracted by you two. Then now, the harassment is also a type of simulation, but it's not the two of you. It's the guilds in Xia Fog City, said the Han family young master. Guilds? Guilds again? After the disturbance you caused the day before, they're currently on high alert. This isn't a good time to disrupt their mission. Therefore, there's no way any guilds would be willing to make a move at this time. Working together won't work. But to really attract their attention, they have to make them think that a guild is going to attack them, said the Han family young master. Then, have they created it? Gu Fei looked at the busy players in the courtyard. How would I know? You're at the scene, right? It's just 12 people harassing them. Gu Fei couldn't believe it. These aren't ordinary 12 people. They couldn't see the smile on the Han family young master's face. They were recommended by one of the 5 roaches, strange pupil. They're all famous players in Xia Fog City. It's hard to ambush them in the fog. We don't know the real identities of these 12 people, but those who are watching the fog should be able to see through them. In the game, a famous expert, in a certain sense, symbolizes a guild, or in other words, gives people the illusion that they are the symbol of a guild. Gu Fei suddenly understood. You're saying that these 12 experts with some background will make people think that their guilds are making a big move? That's right. That's the real reason why we invited strange pupil, said the Han family young master. As expected, Gu Fei sighed. This was a classic Han family young master's strategy. The pawns in the game didn't even know the true meaning of their move. They were at the mercy of the pawns. Poor strange pupil and her friends. Gu Fei only hoped that they wouldn't suffer any losses because of this. The Han family young master continued. They've misunderstood, so they're probably mobilizing a large number of people to defend the front gate. However, this illusion won't last long. Hurry up and do what you need to do. Okay. Gu Fei and Sword Demon replied. How's the situation on your side? Gu Fei asked the Sword Demon. There's someone near the sleeping assassin. I have to kill him, said the Sword Demon. Can't you go into stealth? You'll be exposed when you kill the assassin in stealth, said the Sword Demon. Oh, then hurry up. Once you're done, get on the wall and leave, said Gu Fei. Wait, I don't know if the assassin has anything related to the woodshed. Why don't I go down first and wait for my news? If there's nothing related, I'll leave and you can continue. If there's something related, you should get the information on my side first, said the Sword Demon. Makes sense. Gu Fei agreed. Wait for me. The Sword Demon didn't say anything else. He hurriedly threw down the long rope of the hook and slid down with a whoosh. When he landed and turned around, he saw that the person was already looking at him. The other person's attention was in the direction of the wall. He noticed it almost at the same time the Sword Demon threw the rope. The Sword Demon landed, turned around, and immediately activated Fog Ambush. He had already chosen a position on the wall. This landing point was within the charging range of Fog Ambush. That's fast, the person said in surprise. The Sword Demon also stared closely at the other person. A Grandmaster of Combat. The Sword Demon thought that he was really sorry. A Grandmaster of Combat's vitality wasn't strong or weak. They belonged to the middle class. They definitely couldn't resist the Sword Demon's killing move. He could only regrettably kill them. However, the serious Sword Demon never underestimated the enemy. Although Fog Ambush caught many people off guard with its high speed, the Sword Demon would still seriously use the disappear for 2 seconds effect every time. This time was no exception. After checking the distance between the two sides, the sword demon activated the skill's special effect and instantly disappeared. Even Gu Fei said that this disappear effect was extremely difficult to deal with. This made the sword demon full of confidence in this move. Gu Fei was already the strongest existence in his eyes. However, just as the sword demon's dagger was about to stab, the person suddenly made a move. His body suddenly sank, and his left hand opened from the bottom up. The sword demon was shocked and couldn't dodge in time. He watched as the opponent's left hand caught his dagger. The disappear state was immediately interrupted. The sword demon's face was full of surprise, but he also saw the same surprise on the opponent's face. He seemed to hear the opponent muttering, "Isn't it too fast?" The dagger was caught by the opponent and the disappear state was eliminated, but the skill wasn't completely interrupted. The sword demon saw the opportunity quickly and didn't hesitate at all. He continued to stab the dagger. However, the opponent's reaction wasn't slow either. He quickly realized that the attack didn't stop there. He immediately reached out with his right hand and held his left hand. Both arms stretched out together, firmly supporting the sword demon outside. The sword demon was very depressed. If it was any other profession, at this time, they would definitely be seriously injured. The hand was also a part of the body. Holding the dagger to resist the impact of the skill would also cause their HP to drop. However, the guy in front of him was a Grandmaster of Combat. The Grandmaster of Combat's weapon was a glove, so their hands were equivalent to weapons. Holding the dagger was equivalent to an ordinary player using their weapon to block the sword demon's dagger. Most of the damage was eliminated. The damage was eliminated, but the impact was not reduced. The sword demon's misty ambush was really powerful. It actually pushed the person forward. However, the moment the skill ended, the sword demon was in a dilemma. His dagger was still held tightly by the opponent. How could he continue to attack? Let go of the dagger and start again? He was even more reluctant. In desperation, the sword demon could only kick out. This kind of attack didn't do much damage. The sword demon only hoped that it could make the opponent retreat and let go of his dagger. Unexpectedly, the opponent turned 180 degrees and dodged the sword demon's kick. At the same time, he took a step back, his back against the sword demon's chest. His right hand released the dagger and held it under the sword demon's armpit. He arched his back and swung his arm. The sword demon only felt that the world was turning upside down. He had been thrown to the ground by the opponent. Oh no! The opponent's movements were smooth and skillful. This made the sword demon feel very bad. Could this guy be a martial artist like Qianli and Bai Shi? I'm afraid I'm not a match for this kind of person. The sword demon, who fell to the ground, looked up and met the opponent's inverted face. This person looks a little familiar? The sword demon suddenly thought. Chapter 481. That was close. Sword demon heard the Grandmaster of Combat who was looking back at him muttering, "What a novel skill. It can actually disappear in the middle of a dash. I wonder if I can block it if I touch you again." This guy. What is he blabbering on about instead of seizing the opportunity to kill me? Sword demon was puzzled, but he didn't want to miss such an opportunity. He quickly rolled on the ground and got up, looking at the opponent with full vigilance. In the end, he saw that the opponent had no intention of making another move. He leaned lazily against a big tree behind him, looked at sword demon and said, "Didn't you notice that your skill's disappearance is different from stealth? After disappearing, there will still be a shadow?" Shadow? Sword demon was stunned. But he soon saw the opponent pat his head and continue. "Oh, I forgot. In this city, except in this courtyard, there will never be a shadow." Sword demon finally understood. He had always been curious about the name of this skill, fog ambush, but it seemed to have nothing to do with fog and shadows. Now it seemed that it was a flawless skill in the fog. In this courtyard, sword demon looked up at the sky. The sun was blazing, and the shadows of every object on the ground were clear. And outside this courtyard in the heavy fog, how could there be any shadow? This flaw of fog ambush was naturally covered up, and sword demon and Gu Fei were completely unaware that there was such a weakness. But the opponent noticed it the moment they fought, so he wasn't an ordinary character. "Who are you?" Sword Demon asked. "My name is Windstring," the opponent replied. "Where's the guy with you?" Windstring, one of the top 10 grandmasters of combat. Was he also someone who saw flowers in the fog? Moreover, this person seemed to know Kung Fu like Qianli. This wouldn't be easy to deal with. Sword Demon thought in his heart, and had already sent an urgent signal to Gu Fei. "I met a grandmaster of combat, and he seems to know Kung Fu too." The first thing Gu Fei felt after receiving this news was happiness. He actually had another opponent to fight against. Compared to this, the assassination of Giordano was not even worth mentioning. Gu Fei immediately gave up on sneaking into the small woodshed, and excitedly ran in the direction of the Sword Demon from the top of the wall. At the same time, he sent a message to the Sword Demon. "How are you?" "I'm fine." Sword Demon wondered why he was fine. Just based on the fact that the other party was able to neutralize his Misty Shadow ambush, he knew how powerful he was. He should not be a match for him, but the problem was that the other party did not seem to have any intention of making a move, so the problem of not being a match for him naturally did not exist. Knowing that he was no match for him, Sword Demon would not rashly challenge him. If the cooldown of Misty Ambush was over, he could try again. As for now, he would wait for Qianli to deal with him. Sword Demon was always full of confidence in Gu Fei. The distance between the two of them was not far. With Gu Fei's speed, he arrived very quickly. With a glance, he saw the Sword Demon who was on full alert in the courtyard below, as well as the Grandmaster of Combat who was leaning against a tree without moving. "I'll deal with him. You go check on the sleeping assassin." After Gu Fei sent a message to the Sword Demon, he flew down from the wall. "Watch my sword!" Gu Fei shouted in the air. It was rare for an opponent to appear. He did not want to kill the other party in one hit because of a sneak attack. Therefore, this slash not only reminded the other party, but also did not use double flame flash. Gu Fei actually wanted to confirm the other party's skills. After all, the person who said that the other party knew Kung Fu was Sword Demon. The Sword Demon was indeed an outstanding gamer, but in terms of Kung Fu, Windstring heard the shout and looked up. He saw Gu Fei swinging his sword in front of him, but he was still calm. His upper body bent down so that his head almost touched the ground, but his right leg was lifted. "Sky Drill? How is this possible?" This was the most surprised Gu Fei had ever been since he entered the game. He was so surprised that he hesitated during the fight, and the kick landed on his lower jaw. Gu Fei flew out and hit the wall in the shape of a cross. That's right, it was Sky Drill. Gu Fei believed his eyes. This was what surprised him, because this Sky Drill was one of the moves in Gu Fei's Kung Fu. Although in the martial arts world, there weren't many sectarian views. Each sect and clan would still keep a few special skills as a secret. This soaring Sky Drill was one of the Gu clan's leg techniques that wasn't taught to outsiders. Apart from the Gu clan, no one else would be able to use it. Our family. Would there still be people who would play online games? This made Gu Fei feel very confused. Other than him, the people in his family who practiced Kung Fu were all uncles who were over 50 years old. It seemed like they were a group of people who would not have much interaction with online games. Gu Fei landed on the ground from the wall, and steadied himself. At this time, Feng Xian had already stood up and turned around. "Gu Xian!" Gu Fei called out the other person's name. This Feng Xian was indeed a member of the Gu family, and he was the same generation as Gu Fei. This was his second uncle's child, and his name was Gu Xian. He was born in the same year and month as Gu Fei, but because he was born 4 days earlier, he became Gu Fei's cousin without any hesitation. This kid had shown his talent in Kung Fu earlier than Gu Fei, and he was even more outstanding. He was originally the person that the family had placed the most hope on. Unfortunately, no one was perfect. Compared to talent, this guy had a natural personality, which could be summed up in one word: laziness. There was no word that could describe Gu Xian so well. He was practically the spokesperson for this word. This guy was unbelievably lazy. If he could sit, he would never stand. If he could lie down, he would never sit. In order to not walk 200 meters, he was even willing to endure a day of hunger. To practice kung fu, one had to first train a strong body. This was an absolutely arduous and tiring process. It was simply an extravagant wish for a lazy person like him, who was tired from just taking a few steps, to engage in so many activities. It could be said that the elders in the family had exhausted all methods, but they were still unable to change this guy's laziness. They could only watch as this piece of unpolished jade became a piece of useless wood. They were all so angry that they beat their chests and stamped their feet. After more than 20 years, Wuxia firmly occupied the first place in the list of useless wood in this generation of the Gu family. Gu Fei's other cousins, although none of them practiced martial arts, at least they had their own way of doing things in society. Only this guy had nothing to show for it. When the elders mentioned him, they would shake their heads and sigh. His father, who was also Gu Fei's second uncle, had been furious a long time ago and wanted to expel this useless person from the family. It was only after the other uncles dissuaded him that he gave up. Gu Fei had privately heard his uncles discuss that Gu Xian was no longer just in this generation of the Gu family. It was very likely that he was the most talented and most useless person in the history of the Gu family. How could this guy be so lazy? What on earth was he thinking? This was really a mystery in the history of the Gu family. The Gu family was well off, and they did not care about raising such a freeloader. And this guy was also well behaved. He would never do anything that would affect the mood of others. He became lazier and lazier, and finally reached a certain level. He was too lazy to even have some bad habits. He just quietly stayed at home all day. Speaking of this generation, the others had all gone out to study and pursue careers. Only he and Gu Fei, who practiced kung fu, stayed at home. The two of them were not strangers to each other. However, after Gu Fei left home, he had not seen this guy for a long time. He also did not contact him, because this guy was too lazy to even pick up the phone. Video sorcerer? It really is you. Gu Xian looked at Gu Fei and smiled. Gu Fei was not surprised that Gu Xian could tell that he was the video sorcerer. Although he was lazy, he could not erase Gu Xian's talent. Gu Fei still remembered that when he practiced kung fu as a child, this guy just lay lazily on the side and watched, and could often point out his problems. In terms of talent, this guy was definitely above him. Thinking of this, Gu Fei could not help but sigh. Like the elders in the family, he also felt that it was a pity for this cousin. You guys know each other? Sword Demon saw the signs. More than that, we are a family. Gu Fei said. Oh, Sword Demon let out a long sigh. With this kind of relationship, no wonder the other party did not make things difficult for him. Thinking of this, Sword Demon went to search for the sleeping assassin. As expected, Gu Xian did not have any intention of stopping him. Why are you so diligent in playing online games? Gu Fei asked. I also need to find some fun. Is there anything more suitable for me than this? Gu Xian said. This, you often have to run around. Don't you find it annoying? Gu Fei said. It's annoying, so I always forcefully log off. Gu Xian said. Sword Demon, who was still listening to the conversation between the two, was shocked. He always forcefully logged off, which meant that the problem was quite serious. The system clearly stated that forcefully logging off could rewind the content, including experience, money, skill proficiency, equipment, and everything that a player could have. This guy always forcefully logged off, but he could still be one of the top 10. Although it was only the top 10 grandmasters of combat, it was still amazing. Gu Fei was not too surprised. For this lazy guy, running around between the offline area and the leveling area every day was definitely an incredible thing. Staring at a leveling area and forcefully going up and down every day, this could be his gaming style. What are you doing here? Gu Fei asked. Gu Xian laughed. They specifically found me to deal with someone. When I heard it was you, of course I immediately rushed over. You can't have forgotten that bullying you is a great pleasure for me, right? Gu Fei gritted his teeth. This really brought back some very bad memories. When he was younger, when Gu Xian was not lazy to a certain level, it was common for him to cheat him of food and drink. After that, as mentioned just now, when this guy pointed out the problem in the process of training, it was actually this guy mocking Gu Fei. Today, Gu Fei was at the level of stars in the Gu family, and Gu Xian was at the level of a passerby that no one cared about. But in his heart, Gu Fei was very clear that if Gu Xian was not so lazy, his current position would have been his. Chapter 482. Gu Fei was completely aware of Gu Xian's abilities. Although he didn't practice martial arts, it wasn't to say that he didn't know. It was just that because of the limitations of his body, the speed and power of his moves weren't on the same level as Gu Fei's. But right now this was a game. The body's abilities had already become the game's attributes. In other words, the one who was limited was Gu Fei as a mage. Gu Fei was well aware of this, and Gu Xian seemed to be aware of it as well. Otherwise, with Gu Xian's geek physique in real life, Gu Fei could easily slap him to the ground for 3 days. If Gu Xian was aiming for a vital spot, he might even be slapped to death. Otherwise, why would Gu Xian cause Gu Fei less and less trouble in recent years? But in the game, everything was really hard to say. I say, what's wrong with you? Why did you choose a mage? Gu Xian said. I was careless. I can't change anymore. Gu Fei said. Stupid. Gu Xian scolded. At this time, Sword Demon had already returned from happily searching the sleeping assassin. He opened his palm and extended something in front of Gu Fei's eyes. I found a key. There really is something. Gu Fei was surprised. Could it be the one to open the door to the woodshed? Let's go try. Sword Demon suggested. Gu Fei looked at Gu Xian. What are you guys doing? Gu Xian asked while picking his ears. A mission, go to the woodshed over there. Gu Fei pointed in that direction. So far, Gu Xian was shocked. Sword Demon was even more shocked than him. He was so shocked that his eyes almost fell to the ground. The woodshed was estimated to be about 100 meters away. From this guy's tone, it seemed like he wanted him to walk to the moon. Gu Fei knew he would do this and didn't say anything. Gu Xian moved a few steps in pain and said, let's see if you can pass me first. Gu Fei immediately focused and prepared to fight. Sword Demon didn't understand. After Gu Fei arrived, the two of them began to compare. Sword Spectre already knew why the Grandmaster of Combat looked so familiar to him. It was because the Grandmaster of Combat looked similar to Gu Fei. After that, Gu Fei also said that they were indeed a family. Kinship could naturally be seen as a stronger form of friendship. Sword Spectre had already categorized the Grandmaster of Combat as one of their own. Who would have thought that the Grandmaster of Combat would still want to fight them? Gu Fei did not seem surprised at all, and immediately prepared for battle. Let's see if you've made any progress in these years. Gu Xian really looked like he was lecturing his little brother. He suddenly raised his fist and struck towards Gu Fei. Familiar, it was really too familiar. Gu Fei, who had studied the Gu family's martial arts for 20 years, was already familiar with every move of the family's martial arts. When Gu Xian swung his fist, of course, he would also use the Gu family's martial arts. How to parry, how to counterattack, and how to deal with the opponent, in an instant, for different paths appeared in Gu Fei's mind. It was like the repeated patterns in chess. Okay, let's see how good your martial arts will be in this game where you don't need to train your body. With this thought in mind, Gu Fei chose the path that would lead to the quickest chaos and the most complex changes. He waved his hand and slapped it. As a result, when Gu Xian saw Gu Fei's response, his fist immediately changed. Gu Fei saw that Gu Xian's change was to move towards a simpler path. As expected, he had already seen through Gu Fei's intentions. However, since it was called a change, it would never be a simple path. The path that Gu Xian chose still contained more complicated changes. How could Gu Fei not notice it? He instantly changed his move to lead the way. This time, it's too late even if you want to change. Gu Fei understood, but he did not expect Gu Xian to change his move at the same time as Gu Fei. Moreover, he used the same move as Gu Fei. Fuck. Gu Fei immediately realized that something was wrong. However, as he had expected, it was too late for him to change his move. The two identical moves collided. Hence, the weaker one lost. Gu Fei was forced to retreat a few steps before he could stand firm. Tisk, tsk, tsk. Gu Xian shook his head with a mocking expression. Fuck. Too familiar. Gu Fei was enraged. He had only focused on familiarizing himself with martial arts moves, while Gu Xian had completely grasped Gu Fei's character. From the first punch, he had started scheming to lead Gu Fei into a situation where they had to use the same move. Gu Fei had completely ignored Gu Xian's character. With this guy's laziness, how could he be willing to play any complicated changes with Gu Fei? When he thought of this, he would naturally realize that this guy had ulterior motives and would naturally be on his guard. Unfortunately, it was too late for regrets. In this round, Gu Fei had already lost. Again. Gu Xian waved at Gu Fei, indicating for him to make the first move. Watch my sword. Gu Fei adjusted his mood and suddenly thrust his sword. Gu Xian saw it clearly and shouted, "Yo, he's using a big move." The sword flashed. It was the sword move that Gu Fei had used to defeat the 100 Lives Classic, growing in spring and growing in summer, harvesting in autumn and hiding in winter. To put it simply, this move was a set of combination skills. There were 4 parts, 2, 3, 4, or even just one of them could be used. Therefore, the changes were so complicated that even the Gu family members who were familiar with this move could not understand the true intentions of the swordsman. Not bad. Gu Xian was already a little dazzled by Gu Fei's sword flashes. This kind of eyesight as a martial artist could only be obtained through long periods of practice. Although Gu Xian was talented, his starting point was only slightly higher than the average person's. Without persistent practice, he naturally did not improve. At this time, there were no attributes in the game that could supplement this aspect. When faced with Gu Fei's tricks, he felt the same as the average person. However, Gu Xian's advantage was that he understood the moves. Although he could not see everything with his eyes, he could fill in the blanks with his brain. As he retreated, he waved his palm and actually managed to block Gu Fei's growing in spring. Just as he was about to block it, the sword flashes suddenly converged and abruptly gathered into a bundle. Ouch! Gu Xian screamed and hurriedly flipped backwards. The sword flashes swept past his nose. Gu Xian's right hand, which had been lying in ambush, reached out and gripped the blade tightly. Hee, looks like your current attributes can't fully unleash the power of growing in summer. Gu Xian laughed. However, Gu Fei only smiled and said, "Dual flame flash. Fuck." This time, it was Gu Xian's turn to scream. He hurriedly let go of his sword and his body freefall to the ground, narrowly avoiding the flames that lingered on the Dark Knight streamer. And Gu Fei did not take advantage of the situation to pursue with his sword. Gu Xian looked at the Dark Knight streamer that was gradually losing its flames and quickly understood what Gu Fei was thinking. He faintly smiled and said, "If growing in spring and growing in summer, harvesting in autumn and hiding in winter really had such a change, then this move would be even more amazing." Gu Fei withdrew his sword and looked at him. Gu Xian, who was lying on the ground, suddenly felt a bit dispirited. Gu Fei had a dedication and respect towards martial arts that he didn't have, so he didn't rely on the dual flame flash mixed within the sword move to continue his pursuit. In Gu Fei's heart, this was just a prank to scare him. In a competition between martial artists, this guy only wanted to rely on pure martial arts moves. It's so boring. Gu Xian muttered as he looked at the sun in the sky, which was rarely seen in Xiaowu City. "You guys go, I'm going to sleep for a while." Gu Xian laid on the ground and didn't get up. "What's your name?" "I'll add you," Gu Fei said. "Feng Xian," Gu Xian said. Qianli drunk. Gu Xian clearly received a system notification at this time. "What kind of lousy name is this? You named it yourself?" "Ha ha ha ha." Gu Xian laughed so hard that he almost rolled on the ground. Gu Fei didn't pay attention to him and dragged the sword demon to the woodshed. Who the hell is this person?" The sword demon looked at Gu Xian as if he was looking at a weirdo. "My cousin." Gu Fei was quite unwilling. Damn, he lost in those 4 days, and it was a defeat that he didn't even have a chance to get back at. He's also very strong. The sword demon sighed. To be honest, he didn't know who won or lost, but he felt that the two seemed to be about the same. "You can even deal with him," Gu Fei said. "How is that possible?" The sword demon still had self-awareness. "Stealth backstab," Gu Fei taught him. Stealth can work. The sword demon was surprised. Of course, how could he feel the killing intent? Gu Fei said. This kind of miracle that was produced by the body's natural reaction, consciousness, intuition, aura, and other complex things was something that Gu Xian, who didn't practice and only used his brain at most, couldn't have. Gu Fei was 100% sure. Is that so? The sword demon said as he looked back at Gu Xian and suddenly shouted, "Someone's coming." Gu Fei hurriedly looked back and saw a group of people coming from the side of the building. It was the players who were looking at things in the fog. Just as the young master of the Han family had said, they had to move quickly. It was very easy to see through the fog that there were guilds attacking, but it was just a misunderstanding. Perhaps they would have noticed it even before they had all gathered. At this moment, it seemed that the Han family young master's judgment was indeed correct. Let's go. Gu Fei dragged the sword demon and ran towards the small woodshed. The government building was divided into two sides, and people had already arrived. However, Gu Fei estimated the distance and felt that with his and the sword demon's speed, they could still rush into the small woodshed. Where's your cousin? At this critical moment, the sword demon's loyalty could be seen. He only met him once, but because he was a friend of a friend, he already saw him as his own brother. Don't worry about him, he definitely has a way. Gu Fei urged the sword demon. On Gu Xian's side, the people who were looking at things in the fog arrived in a moment. The leader was one of the core members of the group. Seeing that Gu Fei and the sword demon were running away while Feng Xian was lying here comfortably, he was furious. Feng Xian, didn't you say that I'll leave this side to you? How can you let them run away? Gu Xian didn't move and just looked up at the person in front of him. What can I do? I only realized that he's my relative when I came over. The person was startled and couldn't find any words to refute. Fuck. There was a hot-tempered brother beside this person who slashed at Gu Xian with his sword. Chapter 483. The broadsword slashed down. Gu Xian saw that he would be killed if he continued to lie down, so he unwillingly got up. This move was much faster than what everyone expected. The guy who was stuck to the ground like mud suddenly bounced up like a spring, and in the blink of an eye, he was already in midair. The sword-wielding player was shocked. His sword was already under the opponent's body. When he tried to adjust, his vision turned black, and the opponent's foot was already deeply imprinted on his forehead. He wanted to retaliate, but he did not expect the opponent's attack to be faster than his. His forehead was immediately followed by a second kick. Compared to the person involved, the others felt that this was an exciting performance. The Grandmaster of Combat who bounced up, in the blink of an eye, had already taken a few steps towards the sword-wielding warrior. After his body fell to a certain distance, he threw a few more punches. The Grandmaster of Combat who witnessed this scene was even more mesmerized. So it was possible to perform heavy punches, hooks, and bouncing kicks like this in the air? Oh, wait a minute. Could it be done like this as well? The poor warrior suffered a flurry of punches and kicks. At the last moment before Gu Xian landed on the ground, Gu Xian grabbed both of his shoulders and easily pulled him down. Gu Xian used the momentum to stay in the air for a while the warrior was quickly and cleanly thrown to the ground. Is this a hugging throw? Is it a hugging throw? Amidst the discussion of the surrounding players, the warrior who was slammed painfully pointed his middle finger at his brothers who had forgotten about him, and turned into a white light. Only then did the crowd realize that this was a battlefield, and not an official Grandmaster of Combat battle demonstration. One of their companions had already been defeated by the opponent using a never-before-seen combo attack. At this time, Gu Xian landed slowly and the crowd, who had just woken up from a dream, quickly surrounded him. So troublesome. Gu Xian looked up at the sun in the sky, a little reluctant to leave. Then he saw a flash of white light, and he disappeared. Who did it? The core member of the guild who led the team was also considered an expert, but he did not realize who was killed, and was very confused. Everyone was confused, and looked at each other. I didn't do it, they said one after the other. Finally, someone reacted and pointed at the center of the arena. Could it be, could it be, could it be? Could it be what? Everyone looked at him. Did he forcefully log off? The person finally finished his sentence. The crowd was seething again. They finally realized that this expert had an incomparable temperament. Compared to forcefully logging out, isn't it better to die once? The core leader looked at his brothers with a puzzled expression. Everyone nodded. Compared to the unknown horror of forcefully logging off, losing a level was nothing. This was the consensus among the players. Moreover, the stronger the player, the less they would dare to forcefully log off. What if a rare skill was reloaded? What if an exquisite piece of equipment was reloaded? It was not as if such a thing had never happened before. With such a large group of players, tragedies such as the one mentioned above had already happened and come out to complain. Therefore, everyone was even more careful. Every day before playing the game, they would check to see if they owed electricity bills, paid their internet bill on time, and if there was a fire at home. Otherwise, if they were forced to log off due to these objective reasons, wouldn't it be a loss? But now, right in front of them, a member of the top 10 Grandmasters of Combat had forcefully logged off despite being surrounded. What kind of spirit was this? It's probably an accident. Everyone was discussing. They could not believe that someone had this kind of spirit. It should be, the core leader said maturely. Everyone wait. Everyone nodded. If it was an accident, then after eliminating the possibility, the opponent would definitely rush into the game to check on himself. In the end, after a few minutes, a few people looked at each other awkwardly. Maybe he won't come? Probably. Should we wait? On the other side, Sword Demon followed Gu Fei as he ran, and looked back to see the entire situation. Gu Xian's ability to get up and defeat the warrior in seconds made Sword Demon once again confirm that he was definitely not this person's opponent in a head-on fight. After that, he calmly logged off after being surrounded by the crowd. This calmness made Sword Demon even more certain that this person was definitely not a proper online player. When the two rushed to the door of the small woodshed, the group of people who were originally closer to them were surrounding the place where Gu Xian had forcefully logged off, and the group of people who had come out from the other side of the government building were even closer. The door of the woodshed was so rotten that Gu Fei felt that he could smash it with one palm. But when he pushed the door, it did not open. Gu Fei had already noticed the rusty keyhole on the door. This push was just to test it. Key. Gu Fei shouted. The sword ghost stepped forward and smoothly inserted the key. With a twist and a push, the door opened with a squeak. The two of them hurriedly rushed in and closed the door behind them. The entire woodshed was as dilapidated as the door. There were a few holes in the walls and roof, causing the room to at least have some dim light. The two of them quickly scanned the interior of the room and walked towards a hole where they could observe the outside of the room. Then they stopped at the same time. They shouldn't be able to come in, right? Gu Fei said. Probably, Sword Demon said. Since the door was locked, then according to normal game common sense, even if the door was dilapidated, it was impossible to enter without a key. It was with this inference that Gu Fei rushed into the woodshed with Sword Demon without hesitation. At that time, throwing the flying hook and climbing over the wall was a little urgent. Gu Fei was not very confident, let alone Sword Demon, who was far less skilled than Gu Fei. Therefore, Gu Fei decided to hide in the woodshed for the time being. As for how to escape later, he could only think about it later. I'll keep an eye on it. You searched the house. Sword Demon continued to walk toward the hole. Although he deduced that the other party could not open the door, he was still a little nervous. After all, this game was still a little different. Gu Fei began to carefully inspect the house. Not long after, he heard the sound of knocking on the door. The knocking soon turned into a strong impact. The whole woodshed seemed to be shaking, and dust kept falling down. However, the dilapidated wooden door still stood. Gu Fei and Sword Demon were finally completely relieved. The system's own things were awesome. Sword Demon no longer stared outside the house. There were more and more people outside, and then they were helpless against a small broken door. Sword Demon turned around and checked the house with Gu Fei while saying, "Do you think they'll search for the sleeping assassin? They'll find the key?" Gu Fei said. That assassin shouldn't be here for the first time, right? It can't be that no players have come here before, right? If they have, I think everyone will go up and search after seeing such an NPC. However, we can still find the key today, which means that the key may be a new item and not the only one. Sword Demon was worthy of being an online game veteran and understood the psychology of ordinary players very well. What you said makes sense, but the key didn't indicate this room, right? Gu Fei said. Indeed it didn't. However, they can't come in, but we can. They will naturally deduce that we have the key. If someone has such a strange key in their hands, they will definitely come and try. Sword Demon said. But no one has tried yet. They probably don't have it right now. Gu Fei said. I hope so. Whatever, let's hurry up and search. Since we're here, we can't get out for a while. Gu Fei said. Outside the small firewood house, the guild leader 3 Size Flowing Maple had also personally arrived. Originally, he led the main force in the front yard to prepare to build a strong line of defense against a large-scale guild invasion. However, after quickly discovering that it seemed to be a misunderstanding, he immediately dismissed the people and returned to their original positions. The two teams that passed through the left and right side of the government building were actually just returning to their original positions. Because Gu Fei and the others broke through from the backyard, this was a heavily guarded area. However, as soon as they arrived, they saw the two suspicious people, Gu Fei and Sword Demon, which surprised them. Originally, they thought that there were a few people guarding this place, including the confident Wind String who had volunteered himself. Everyone thought that even if Gu Fei and Sword Ghost came in at this time, and they couldn't stop them, they would at least send a message. Who would have thought that they would bump into Wind String without a word? In the end, not only did he let go of his opponent, he even killed one of their members. After 3 Size Flowing Maple came over, the core leader first scolded Windstring. Relative. 3 Size Flowing Maple listened to the relationship between the two, and was a bit confused. He then looked at Drifting. Drifting smiled bitterly. I'm not close enough to know his relative. Drifting and Gu Fei weren't that close, and the number of times they met could be counted. For example, when Sword Demon saw Gu Fei, he could see that he was similar to Gu Fei, but Drifting was far from that level. Are they inside now? 3 Size Flowing Maple felt that there was no point in discussing the blood relationship between the two. Everyone nodded. 3 Size Flowing Maple looked at the keyhole on the door that couldn't be destroyed. Do they have the key? Or is it the legendary Thief's Picklock skill? Someone guessed. That skill seems to be Thief's, right? Someone said. Sword Demon is an assassin, right? 3 Size Flowing Maple asked Drifting. Drifting nodded. Where did they get the key? 3 Size Flowing Maple was surprised. Maybe they snuck into the government hall 2 days ago to get the key. Someone made a wrong judgment. That makes sense. His wrong judgment was acknowledged by others. His mission is to assassinate Giordano. Why is he in this small broken room? 3 Size Flowing Maple mumbled. He walked around the room and saw the hole. He hurriedly went over to take a look. After Sword Demon left the hole, Gu Fei was still paying attention to this place. When he noticed that the light in the hole was blocked, he immediately knew what was going on. He grabbed something and threw it. Fuck! 3 Size Flowing Maple shouted and took a few steps back. The surrounding players looked at him and lowered their heads, hiding the smile on their faces. The guild leader of the largest guild in Cloud Fog City had his face turn black after being slapped by a handful of black ash. Chapter 484. 3 Size of Flowing Maple quickly wiped his face, but in the end his black face was smeared with dirt. Everyone continued to hold back their laughter. Those who had more amazing endurance clenched their teeth and said, "Go wash up. Hurry up and think of a way. We definitely can't let them escape." 3 Size of Flowing Maple roared hysterically before hurrying off. Everyone looked at each other. In their eyes, their guild leader was always calm and collected. Who would have thought that such a small matter that didn't affect the overall situation would provoke his anger? The human heart was the hardest thing to understand. 3 Size of Flowing Maple temporarily left, and the group of people continued to study the hidden lock on the wooden door. After confirming that no one in the guild had the legendary unlocking skill, everyone began to discuss the problem of the key. With so many people in such a big guild, there were still some capable people. Someone quickly pointed out that when they arrived, Gu Fei and Sword Demon had left from a certain place, and Gu Xian was lying in a certain place. Coincidentally, there was an NPC assassin sleeping there. Was there a key? There was no need to guess if there was a key or not. That NPC was always sleeping there. They would know once they went to take a look. Immediately, a few people ran over there. Gu Fei, who had shaken off 3 sighs of flowing maple's dust, was peeking through the hole and noticed the situation. Their reaction is so fast. They seem to have already discovered that there's something wrong with that assassin. Sword Demon was also startled. Then what do we do? What else can we do? Pray that the key hasn't refreshed yet, so they'll just think that there's nothing strange there. Gu Fei said. This quest seems quite complicated. I believe that the quest item won't refresh so quickly. Sword Demon replied. As the reality became more and more consistent with Gu Fei's analysis, Sword Demon already began to believe that this quest didn't appear on the list, but still existed. He was different from Gu Fei's indifference. After all, he was a veteran gamer, so he more or less cared. And I hope so. Did you find anything? Gu Fei said. This is the only place left. Sword Demon looked ahead. The small firewood room had been searched. At this time, the Sword Demon was staring at the firewood piled high in the corner. Because it was a VR game, these things could all be moved. Searching this kind of place was actually quite tiring. It was not like before, when you moved the mouse up and found that the shape had changed. Now you had to be a laborer. Everything outside the woodshed was as Gu Fei and Sword Demon had hoped. The players who touched the sleeping assassin did not find anything. They could only continue to rack their brains to do mental work. Meanwhile, Gu Fei and Sword Demon were sweating profusely as they did physical work. Finally, the Sword Demon, who had been working hard to move firewood without complaint, made a discovery and shouted excitedly, "Got it!" On the other side, Gu Fei quickly dropped what he was doing and came over. He found that there was a cellar under the pile of firewood that Sword Demon had moved away. The two quickly cleared the firewood on top and then were stunned. The cellar was a cellar, but it was a locked cellar. Sword Demon squatted down and pulled it. The lock was very strong. He wanted to take the key to the door of the firewood room to try, but the size didn't match. Let's look, Gu Fei said as he rummaged through the pile of firewood. The other places had been carefully searched. If there was a key, it could only be in this pile of firewood. Unfortunately, luck had left them this time. The pile of firewood was thoroughly searched, but there was nothing to show for it. How do we do this? Gu Fei opened the diary and looked for clues in it. The sword ghoul was so tired that he was lying on the ground, breathing heavily. He looked at the ceiling and suddenly had a thought. Could it be that the 2 keys are also on the sleeping assassin, but these 2 keys respawned at different times, so the players picked them up and messed things up? That's why I can't get 2 keys at once. That's possible. Gu Fei nodded, then said, but in the near future, no one will come to this place except for players looking at it through the fog. If there really is a key, it's likely that it's in their hands. Unless the key's refresh time is many days, and it's picked up by someone else before they start their quest. Oh no! The sword ghost suddenly shouted. It looks like we didn't discover anything during the search just now. But now that we've discovered something suspicious, we'll definitely be discussing it in the guild. With so many people in the guild, there's no doubt that someone has discovered this NPC. Moreover, the person who happened to find the key is probably rushing over right now with the key. That's not necessarily true, Gu Fei said. I've learned about the situation of this courtyard. Before the mission began, the only clear and transparent space in Xiafog City was their largest trading market, but the backyard space was limited. Look at the flowers, grass, and trees. Although the environment is good, it is not a square, and it is far from the main entrance, so it has always been deserted. Even after the mission was occupied, there was no one guarding the backyard. It was not until I climbed over the wall in the backyard that people began to set up here. What you said can only guarantee that there will not be many people who have a chance to touch this key, but in the past few days, after all, there are people who are looking through the fog here. I promise you, if such an NPC is found, There will definitely be a lot of players who will come to find out. Sword Demon said. So, it is really possible for people who are looking through the fog to get this key? Gu Fei said. Very likely, and maybe they are already here, unless they happen to be offline at this moment. Wait, if they find this key, of course they will think about how to use it, and then this small woodshed with a lock is a pretty obvious target, right? Gu Fei said. Without waiting for Sword Demon to answer, Gu Fei had already begun to look at the small woodshed. Although the system has always been very shameless, isn't it a bit too much to hide a cellar so thoroughly under the pile of firewood? Sword Demon turned his head. There was no need to discuss the system's shamelessness. He understood the meaning of Gu Fei's words. You mean when this guy touched the key, he also found that it was used to open this woodshed? And he also found this cellar. He suspected that there was something good inside, but unfortunately he couldn't open it and couldn't get it. So he used the firewood pile to hide it? Gu Fei nodded. That's why he buried it without leaving any clues. Yes. This is super possible. Sword Demon understood the psychology of all kinds of players very well. If this is the case, this guy will definitely not come out at this time. I think this person is so scheming he will definitely come out at this time. Why? Because the longer we stay inside, the more likely we are to find the cellar he hid. Moreover, he will worry that we are actually coming for this cellar, so he will be more eager to pull us out and clean us up, right? Gu Fei said. Then isn't his action a bit too slow? So it is very likely, as you said, that he is not online right now, Gu Fei said. Sword Demon was silent for 3 seconds and said, So after analyzing so much, what conclusion did we reach? We are safe for the time being, but we have to leave as soon as possible. Right now is the peak period for players online, and this person may come at any time, Gu Fei said. Leaving is a bit difficult. Sword Demon glanced out of the hole again, and was surrounded. Come, let's clean up here first. Gu Fei pointed to the cellar. That guy is online, and hears that someone entered the firewood room. He will definitely have doubts and come to take a look. If he finds that the cellar has been touched, he will probably strengthen some defensive measures, which is not good for us. If he finds that it has not been touched, the situation will remain the same, which should be better. Sword Demon said as he moved the firewood. What if he remembers the original shape he moved out? Gu Fei was speechless. If he is really that careful, then I am convinced. The two quickly piled up the firewood, hid the cellar, and clapped their hands. Right now there was no hope of opening the cellar, and there was a danger that someone could open the door and enter at any time, so there was no time to waste here. It was necessary to leave as soon as possible. Both of them were very busy. Gu Fei observed the others' movements from the hole to see if there were any opportunities to take advantage of. Sword Demon was describing the situation to Han family young master in detail, to see if there could be any help from the outside. Won't they come out if they die? Han family young master always wanted to taunt them first. Sword Demon, who was used to this, ignored it calmly and continued to talk about business. Right now, I estimate that there are about 300 people outside. The number of people observed from the small hole was limited. Sword Demon estimated based on the density of people's positions and his memory of the outside space. Let Qianli kill them all. Han family young master continued to taunt. Do you have any ideas? Sword Demon continued to ignore him. Not at the moment. You can't explain the situation clearly. I have to at least observe from the overall situation. Han family young master said. There is no time. Sword Demon said. The other party may open the door with the key at any time. If it really doesn't work, let's forcefully go offline first. I think this method is feasible. Gu Fei interrupted. This was actually also a taunt from Han family young master. Who would have thought that Gu Fei would agree with it? Han family young master and Sword Demon were both shocked. But forcefully going offline was something Sword Demon would never consider, even if he was beaten to death. How about this? Qianli will go out and attract attention. You take the opportunity to sneak out. 1 dead is better than 2 dead. Han family young master suggested again. This method works too. Gu Fei nodded again. Absolutely not. If Sword Demon was asked to attract the firepower to cover their escape, he would do it without hesitation. But if others were to sacrifice for him, he would feel bad. Then let's just kill them directly. Kill as many as you can. If you can rush out, then do it. If you can't, then die. Gu Fei began to simplify the complicated problem. Agreed. Who says we're definitely going to die? Sword Ghost's blood was boiling. We will definitely die, but it depends on how many we can kill before we die. Gu Fei was not interested in imaginary miracles. He was fully aware of the extent of his strength in this situation. Do you want to rush out without dying? Unless you have unlimited mana. Okay, you two just wait. There will be a chance. Han family young master suddenly threw out a sentence. Butterfly knot. There is not much plot but a lot of dialogue. Is there anyone who likes to read the dialogue more than the plot? In fact, the plot is also hidden in the dialogue. You're tuning in to the Lime's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.